Chapter 319. When Xia Jinyuan opened his eyes again, he got up with a bitter smile. Fortunately, he didn't need to take off his Tibetan clothes in the middle of the night, so he didn't need to tidy up and go out directly. When he walked out of the tent, he consciously walked towards Yi Qian's tent. Just a few steps away, he saw a faint red flickering under the bright moonlight. Still not resting? Headmaster Chun had already seen clearly who came out of the tent. He joked, "With Yang Jin guarding tonight, Captain Xia can have a good night's sleep." Xia Jinyuan smiled bitterly and walked to Principal Chun, who was smoking. He sighed and said, "I finally understand why you smiled that night. You know Yi Qian well. It's not easy to win her heart. Captain Xia, you have to know that the older the wiser. As for me, I'm 2 rounds older than you. The amount of salt I've eaten is no less than the amount of rice you've eaten. She's not an ordinary girl. She's very powerful. Previously, there was a boy named Gao Yang. I could tell that this boy was interested in her. His family background was also very good. However, little Jian didn't have any feelings for him at all. In her eyes, family background isn't an advantage, and it's not worth it for her to waver. Captain Xia, you're on your own now." After that, Principal Chun smiled and patted Xia Jinyuan on the shoulder. He said earnestly, "Uncle Jin and I both hope that little Jian is a responsible and independent girl. If she is really easily won over by you, then she won't be the little Jian we like." This was the reason why Principal Chun and Uncle Jin didn't stop Xia Jinyuan at all. The truth was that they knew from the beginning that Yi Qian was not easy to win over. Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows. After a bitter smile, he revealed a calm and confident expression. "It's good news for me. She doesn't like Gao Yang, and she doesn't like Xia Jinyuan. One is rich, and the other is handsome. Well, the little girl has high standards. It's really something to be happy about." "Ha ha ha. You're right, you're right." As Captain Xia said, "I really don't have to worry about little Jian falling in love at such a young age." Principal Chun laughed even louder. There was a hint of schadenfreude in his laughter. "Good luck, Major Xia. Falling in love with little Jian? This was a test of one's patience. If he really persevered, it would be a good thing. Both of them were in the army. At least they could walk side by side and understand each other." Under the starry night sky, Xia Jinyuan smiled calmly and said elegantly, "I never change my mind about the things I've decided on. No one will interfere. Not even my family can influence my decisions." This was to tell Principal Chun that he was definitely not doing this on the spur of the moment. Moreover, his family background was not a problem. That was why Xia Jinyuan was said to be a very reassuring man. He would always be the first to speak out other people's concerns. The certainty in his words made people feel his sincerity. Every word he said was powerful and resonant. Principal Chun did not immediately express his opinion. He would not be swayed by a few words from a young man. Distance tests a horse's strength, and time reveals a person's heart. A person's heart was the most fickle. It was better to wait and see. On the 3rd day, under Xia Jinyuan's care, Yi Qian's injuries had recovered to the point where he could walk with lighter steps. He no longer had to worry about inflammation every day. Chapter 320. Yi Qian had been hoping for her wound to heal quickly, so she was especially careful. Now, she didn't need to lie on the bed and let Xia Jinyuan change the sterile gauze. She could sit down so that it would be more convenient for him. After changing the gauze this time, you don't have to change it again. Although the wound is healing, remember not to move too much. After changing the dressing, it was almost time for Xia Jinyuan to leave. Before he left, he reminded her in more detail, "Don't touch the water or climb the slope. If you want to go outside to get some fresh air, walk around the tent. Today is the 3rd day. After the 7th day, I'll drive over to pick you and Uncle Chin up." After changing the gauze, Yi Qian put on a shawl to cover the curve from her shoulders to her slender waist. She smiled and said, "I'll be careful. Don't worry, I also want to leave as soon as possible. I have to report to school in a few days." Her high school life was about to begin. She was looking forward to it. Number 1 middle school is not bad. So far, there have been a few students from military schools. However, there are none from the National University of Science and Technology. If you can get in, You'll be the pride of the school. Xia Jinyuan found out from Principal Chan that she had given up on the provincial #1 middle school and chose #1 middle school because it was closer to Fujian town and she could come back anytime on Saturday and Sunday. High school is much more important than junior high school. You should take care of your studies while training. Otherwise, if your grades drop after training, it will be as difficult as getting into a military school. This time, there was a 1-month break after leaving the mountain. He would see if he could send her directly to #1 middle school. Xia Jinyuan made up his mind and did not stay in the no-man's land for long. After giving a few instructions, he stood up without hesitation. I'll be leaving first. Take good care of yourself for the next few days. When he stayed, Yi Qian really wanted him to leave quickly. Now that he was really leaving, she felt a little uncomfortable. She stood up quickly and turned around. She saw that his mountain-like figure had already walked to the curtain of the tent. Just as she was about to catch up, Xia Jinyuan stopped abruptly. He lifted the curtain with one hand and looked back with a deep gaze. Bon voyage, Captain Xia. All of a sudden, Yi Qian felt a little uneasy. Under his burning gaze, he said softly, "Return to the military depot safe and sound." Xia Jinyuan was about to take a step out of the room, but when he saw her looking at him with sparkling eyes that seemed to be filled with reluctance to part with him, his heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly turned back. Yi Qian was startled by him turning around. Dai Qing furrowed her brows and looked nervously at the man who was striding back. She couldn't help but purse her lips. His gaze was too scorching, bursting with light like the sun. The heat was so great that it seemed as if the slightest bit closer would cause one to turn into ashes. This feeling made her unable to get used to it. Was sly little fox. She always took a step back just as he was about to take a step forward. When he took a step back, she would carefully take a step forward. This kind of advance and retreat was really sweet torture. Xia Jinyuan walked closer with a faint smile on his thin lips. He was so close that she could feel his breath on her jade-like face. When he saw the faint blush on her face, he smiled and sighed. "Oh, you." The word "you" was filled with inexplicable helplessness and endless affection. His slender and strong arms gently wrapped around her shoulders and pulled her gently into his embrace. "I'll be safe and sound too. You too. Rest well. You're still young. Don't think too much." Chapter 321. I wanted to leave in a more natural manner without looking back. Who knew that when I turned around, I would see a little fox looking at me with teary eyes. Sigh, forget it. I'll just come back and comfort my little fox for a while. Yi Qian's body had been stiff ever since he suddenly pulled her into his arms. When she heard what he said, she immediately lifted her head and looked up. She was both angry and amused. "Captain Xia, your eyesight is really bad. I just want to send you off to show how much you've taken care of me these past few days." "Why?" "Oh, it seems that I'm misunderstood again." He smiled and interrupted Yi Qian. "A sweet misunderstanding. Little fox, if you really want to thank me, don't say anything in 3 seconds." His kiss fell softly along with his words, landing beside her forehead. His thin lips pressed against her skin, bringing a warmth that could make one's heart tremble. He paused for about 3 seconds before leaving. His voice was as clear as water as he smiled and said, "I'll come to pick you up soon. A kiss goodbye as a way of thanking me." Yi Qian's body became even stiffer. Even after he left, she was still stiff in the tent and didn't move for a long time. Her eyes were still wide open in shock. Obviously, she still hadn't come back to her senses. A kiss as a way of thanking him? What a twisted logic. She raised her hand and wiped her forehead. Yi Qian was once again defeated by Major Xia's shamelessness. A kiss as a way of thanking him. She didn't want to use this method of thanking him at all. Yi Qian's hand stopped on her forehead. After standing there for a while, she slowly walked out of the tent. She saw Xia Jinyuan walking far away with a few herdsmen. He wasn't wearing his combat uniform. He was still dressed in his gorgeous Tibetan clothing. When he walked with the herdsmen, he looked like a noble young master. He had an imposing appearance, and his every movement was incomparably noble. She didn't see the expression on Xia Jinyuan's face when he left. His elegant and handsome face always had a faint smile like the moon. When he was chatting with the herdsman, The smile in his eyes never disappeared. His gentle and elegant expression made his features even more exquisite and handsome. His mind was filled with the image of Yi Qian's confused expression after he kissed him. Yi Qian's wet eyes were wide open, and he looked so adorable that he wanted to kiss him a few more times. Unfortunately, he could only give her a little taste. If he kissed her again, it wouldn't scare her silly. Instead, it would make her angry. This time, Xia Jinyuan was much faster than when he came. After riding out of the no man's land, he immediately contacted the members of the Snowfield Brigade. Soon, he got into the jeep sent by the military station and rushed back to the base. On the 7th day, Yi Qian did not see him. He only saw a jeep from the military depot. The driver was a motorized soldier with 8 years of driving experience in the Tibetan region. He was a motorized soldier sent by the military station and was also the soldier that Xia Jinyuan had arranged to pick up Little Fox. Why didn't he come? Yi Qian didn't ask. If he couldn't come, he must be out on another mission. When he returned to Fujian town, there were still 3 days before the start of school. This time, he didn't go back to Yi Qian's base. The wound on his waist didn't need gauze anymore. After the military doctor from the base examined him, he smiled and said, "Captain Xia's skills are good. The stitches are done well. There will be a scar, but it's not a big problem. You don't have to worry about taking a bath. It won't affect the start of school." When Uncle Jin heard this, a smile appeared on his face. "That's good. Thank you for coming here." Chapter 322. Yi Qian hadn't returned yet, but the military doctor from the platoon had already arrived. It was as if he knew that Yi Qian would return today and had been waiting at home for a long time. When a military doctor mentioned Captain Xia, Yi Qian knew that he had specially arranged for this to happen. He wasn't there, but his presence was everywhere. "You're welcome. This is what we should do." The military doctor tidied up the simple medical kit and reminded him with a smile, "Yi Qian, don't come to the platoon for the next few days. The male soldiers in the platoon don't know how to hold back. Also, you still have a few days before school starts. Rest well at home." He looked at her and started joking again. "You've been missing for a month. The regiment commander and the political commissar have been nagging about why you haven't come to the platoon. Is it because you guys secretly roasted pheasant last time? They criticized you so harshly that you didn't dare to come over. As for me, even if I stayed in the infirmary, I was still nagged about it. The regiment commander kept nagging about me, and I really didn't dare to go. The first time I was caught secretly roasting pheasant, I was already traumatized." Yi Qian put down his t-shirt and smiled. "I'll return to the platoon after the regiment commander completely forgets about this incident. Thank you for your hard work today." Everyone in the platoon knew who Yi Qian was. A little girl like her was even more hard-working than the male soldiers. Her shooting accuracy was the highest in the platoon, and she dared to compete with the elite soldiers. This little girl was born to be a soldier. Even the soldiers in the kitchen recognized her. Hearing this, the military doctor laughed and said, "I'll definitely pass on your message." "Oh, right, I almost forgot about this." As he spoke, he took out an envelope from his medical kit. "This is the pension from the military. You're the orphan of a martyr, so you'll receive a pension every year until you graduate from university. Here's $2,000. It's not a lot, but it's enough for your living expenses." When it came to money, the military doctor spoke quickly, afraid that Yi Qian would refuse. The political commissar said that if you have any objections, you can talk to him personally. Anyway, what he means is that he has fought with all kinds of soldiers for more than 10 years. He doesn't believe that he can't deal with a little girl like you. Yi Qian knew that they were doing this for her own good. She took the envelope and smiled. "Okay, I got it. I won't let the army down." What she needed was not gratitude, but hard work. Only hard work would not disappoint her. "We can all see that you are a good kid. Do your best." When the military doctor saw that she accepted it so graciously, he was even happier in his heart. The army had fought for it for her, so naturally they hoped that she would accept it. If she rejected it, the army would probably not fight for her in the future. The little lass had always been able to differentiate clearly. It was no wonder that the commander thought highly of her. Yi Qian really needed the money. Her high school tuition and miscellaneous fees were waived, and the school gave her 100 renminbi a month for her living expenses. However, she still needed to pay for her study materials, especially since she needed to finish her high school studies within a year and a half. She needed countless materials and test papers. Don't feel burdened. This is the Army's affirmation of you and their training for you. After the military doctor left, Uncle Jin looked kindly at Yi Qian, whose eyes were slightly red. Good kid, don't treat this money as a burden. Treat it as motivation. Work hard and walk steadily step by step. This is what the commander and the political commissar expect of you. Back then, the army gave a pension to Yi Jifan. More than 10 years have passed. No matter how much money there is, Sun Dongqing will calculate it until there's not a cent left. Moreover, she might even say that she's been paying for it. That's why I haven't mentioned it. You don't have to think about it either. Just know what you're doing. Chapter 323. Yi Qian nodded. I'll listen to you. These aren't things I should care about. They're not worth my time. Don't worry. I know what I need. After a slight pause, she smiled. Actually, Sun Dongqing didn't take much of the money. Most of it was given to my aunt's family by my grandpa and grandma. A few years ago, when they came back, I only mentioned the money. My aunt cried, threw a tantrum, and threatened to hang herself. She said that my niece was forcing her to her death. These things, I won't hide it from Grandpa General. I'll remember them. I won't get involved with my dad's relatives. Now that I've moved out, I don't want to have anything to do with them. Uncle Jin remembered what happened a few years ago. Yi Jixiang, the woman from the Yi family who took away all of his sister-in-law's pension and didn't come back for a few years, sneaked back to the village on New Year's Eve. He didn't know what happened. She beat Yi Qian up and left him outside. If the village chief, Zhang Food, didn't pick up Yi Qian on the way home from drinking, the girl in front of him would have been dead. That year, he was in the army for Chinese New Year. When he came back, it was already the 4th day of Chinese New Year. Yi Jixiang's family had already left the village. Since then, he didn't go back to the army for Chinese New Year. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Girl, think about the future. Think about your future. Think about your future. Uncle Jin tapped his opium pipe on the ground. Behind the smoke, his eyes were cloudy. You live your life, and they live theirs. Let's mind our own business. Yi Qian narrowed her eyes. Her hand that was rolling the cigarette for Uncle Jin paused. Her eyes gradually darkened. She looked up and saw Uncle Jin leaning to the side and smoking. It seemed like he didn't want to talk about the Yi family. Yi Qian wanted to ask about Yi Jixiang's family and her uncle, but she didn't know what to say. Because every time she mentioned the Yi family, Uncle Jin didn't want to talk about it. Forget it. She shouldn't think too much about the Yi family's matters. She wouldn't even ask about tuition fees or living expenses. To Yi Qian, money was not her main concern, but to Sun Dongqing, money was her life. Ever since she found out that Yi Qian had returned to the village, she had been packing her luggage at home, preparing to return to town early the next morning. Ying, quickly call your father and ask him to send a car to pick us up tomorrow. You talk to us every day about being incorruptible, but in the end, you only know how to enjoy yourself. I heard that that wretched girl Yi Qian has returned to the village. I wonder if she came back to ask for tuition fees. She's born to be a debt collector. I won't give her a single cent. During this period of time, Ying was very popular in the village. As the only junior high school student in the village who was admitted into the province's #1 middle school, if it weren't for the fact that her father was the mayor and needed to maintain his integrity, he would have held a banquet. Hearing this, she looked up from her English book and said coldly, "Didn't Dad give the money to Grandpa? Now that Grandpa, Grandma, and Auntie are living in the big city, even if Yi Qian comes to ask for living expenses, just tell her that Grandpa and Grandma took the money. Wouldn't that be enough? Those two old farts are enjoying themselves outside. When did they ever come back to see you, their granddaughter? If you say that they took the money, the first one to jump at you is your father. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Ying, remember this. You can mess with anyone, but never make your grandpa and grandma angry." When Sun Dongqing mentioned her parents-in-law, even a shrewish woman like her was a bit scared. Chapter 324. Ying did not have much of an impression of her grandparents. She had only met them a few times. If they had not been brought up today, she would have forgotten that she had them. What can I do to provoke them? I'm enjoying my life with my aunt's family. In their eyes, only my aunt's son is their grandson. What am I? Provoking them? I still want to live for a few more years. Ying recalled what had happened a few years ago. She could not help but shudder at the memory. At that time, she used to bully Yi Qian as well. However, compared to her aunt's family, it was nothing, especially her aunt's husband. He looked like a fiend and kicked Yi Qian away as if he was an enemy. However, no one dared to step forward to stop him. Her grandparents even said, "Jinx, you're a good-for-nothing. At least you're dead." After shivering, Ying grabbed son Dongqing's hand and said in a low voice, "Mom, let's not provoke my aunt's family. If anything happens, let's push Yi Qian out." "Do I need you to tell me that? I know what I'm doing." Son Dongqing looked at her daughter proudly. Daughters were their parents' sweethearts. This saying was not wrong at all. If she really comes over and asks us for her living expenses, I'll just tell her that the money is for your grandparents. If she wants it, she can call them herself. Based on how much your grandparents and your aunt's family hate Yi Qian, they'll come back and beat her to death. When Ying heard this, she frowned in confusion. Hate? Why would my aunt's family hate Yi Qian? I remember when I was in the 5th grade, Yi Qian was almost beaten to death by my aunt's husband. Also, how did my aunt's husband become blind in his right eye? Why have I never heard you mention this to Dad? At this point, a trace of panic flashed across son Dongqing's face. She brushed her hair to cover it up and said, "You're a child. Why you care so much? Just remember, don't provoke your aunt's family. Let those two old farts live outside. We'll be happy to have some peace and quiet." Ying, on the other hand, was cautious. It seemed that things were not as simple as they seemed. Her aunt's family didn't come back for years. When she was in the 5th grade, they came back in the middle of the night. After the Lunar New Year's Eve, they left again on the first night of the Lunar New Year. Back then, he was young and didn't think much of it. Now that he thought about it, it was quite abnormal. 2 days before school reopened, Yi Zhifan drove a small sedan back to Shuku. He came back to pick up his daughter, Ying. The next morning, he personally drove his daughter to the provincial high school to study. That night, Yi Zhifan reminded his daughter a lot of things. The gist of it was that she had to keep a low profile when she went to the province. She shouldn't be like the eldest daughter who didn't know how to deal with people. He had inquired about the provincial first high school. The sons and daughters of the provincial leaders were all studying there. He was just a small town mayor. If something happened, don't expect him to step in. Ying wasn't scared, but son Dongqing was scared. She stuttered. "Why don't we not let Ying go to the provincial high school? What if they're a bunch of bullies? How can we make decisions for Ying?" At this moment, son Dongqing realized that studying in the provincial high school wasn't a good thing. "Mom, don't talk about making decisions for me. I know how to get along with them." Ying pouted unhappily and said to Yi Zhifan, "Dad, tell me everything you know. I know whose son and daughter are." Chapter 3:25. More than a year had passed. Yi Qian was not the only one who had grown. Yi Ying had grown as well, and she had grown according to Yi Zhifan's arrangements. In comparison, Yi Qian was much calmer. After having dinner with Uncle Jin, they drew many detailed pictures of famous guns from different countries under the light before climbing into bed to sleep. The next morning, Yi Qian arrived at the entrance of the village at 6 o'clock. She waited for the boys from the same village to report to number 1 middle school. She did not ask Uncle Jin to send her off. Instead, she woke up early and waited for them at the entrance of the village before Uncle Jin woke up. There was still half an hour before the appointed time. Yi Qian sat by the road at the entrance of the village. She did not feel bored. She listened to the morning birds and quietly waited for the boys from the same village to arrive. The sound of a car engine came from the village. After a while, Yi Qian saw a black car coming through the mist. Yi Qian did not get up or look at it. She sat there leisurely. In the car, son Dongqing sat in the passenger seat and sighed. "This car is so nice. When Ying is on vacation, we'll drive this car to pick her up. It's comfortable, and we don't have to squeeze into the train. Zhifan, remember this. We'll use this car to pick Ying up every month." Mom, this is a government car. Do you really think it's our family's car? Ying sat alone in the back. It was spacious and very comfortable. She put down the car window, and the morning breeze blew in with the mist. It was indeed much more comfortable than squeezing into the train. Yi Jifan looked at Ying from the rearview mirror and praised her. Ying, you've grown up. Remember what Dad said. When you get to #1 middle school, you need to have your own circle. No matter what other people's identities are, you're all students. This identity is your biggest advantage. You don't have to suck up to them. You have to think of a way to make them want to stay away from you. Remember the names Dad told you last night. They're all bad students. They all got in because of their family's connections. You, on the other hand, are a top student. If you want to get along well with them, you have to start with your studies. Is there a need? Yi Jifan, who was preaching attentively, suddenly slammed on the brakes. Ying, who was listening attentively, was caught off guard. Her whole body slammed into the back of the seat. Sun Dongqing, who was also caught off guard, was also thrown forward by the inertia of the brakes, and then fell back heavily. She was shocked and hurriedly said, "What are you doing? Why did you stop?" As they spoke, they stopped as well. The couple looked at the figure sitting on a rock at the entrance of the village, about a meter away from the car. Sun Dongqing had already unbuckled her seatbelt. She pushed open the car door and rushed over aggressively. "Hey, you wretched girl. No wonder he didn't see anyone when he came back. He must have planned to get stuck in a traffic jam early in the morning. Let me tell you, there's no way." When the car stopped abruptly, Yi Qian naturally saw who was driving. When Sun Dongqing rushed over, she also got up from the rock. Yi Qian looked coldly at Sun Dongqing, who had nothing good to say. She lowered her eyebrows slightly and looked down at her. "The road is so wide. Just drive your car. What does it have to do with me if you stop? Any son, don't ask for trouble in front of me, okay?" At this moment, Sun Dongqing realized that Yi Qian, who had been calling her a wretched girl, had grown a lot taller after not seeing her for summer break. She was now half a fist taller than her precious daughter. Yi Jifan also got out of the car, followed by Ying, who appeared victorious. Chapter 326. The father and daughter walked over together. Ying was the first to speak with a smile. "So it's sister. Why are you sitting here so early in the morning waiting for us?" "Mom, it's rare to see sister. Just give her something. 2 days ago, a beggar came to our house asking for rice, and you gave him 50 cents out of kindness. You can't be too stingy with sister. Just give her 1 yuan." She was treating Yi Qian as a beggar who was easy to get rid of. Yi Qian glanced at Ying, who was acting all high and mighty in front of him. He sneered and said indifferently, "You've done too many bad things. Even if you occasionally show kindness and accumulate some virtue, it's useless. Am I right, Mayor Yi? You damn girl, Sun Dongqing could tell that he was mocking her. She was instantly enraged and raised her hand to slap Yi Qian's face. She had just raised her hand when Yi Jifan fiercely pressed it down. She heard him say in a low voice, "You've suffered so much at her hands. You still dare to mess around." Sun Dongqing suddenly remembered what had happened in the past. She immediately withdrew her hand from Yi Qian's hand. However, she was unwilling to give up and scolded, "I'm her aunt. I'm still her aunt. What, can I teach a disobedient thing a lesson? Your daughter is here. You can teach her a lesson however you want. Also, Annie's son, don't try to claim kinship here. The next time you dare to reach out, you can see who's more powerful." Facing Yi Jifan's family, Yi Qian would never be soft-hearted. He glanced at them coldly and stopped at Ying. He said slowly with a faint smile, "You can see who's the one who's going to be taught a lesson." These words were full of threat. Ying, who had a smug smile on her face, suddenly shivered. She asked in shock, "What do you want to do?" "What I want to do depends on what Annie's son wants to do." Yi Qian smiled coldly and looked at Sun Dongqing, who was scared by his words and didn't dare to speak. The coldness in her eyes was like 1,000 feet of snow, and only a frightening chill could be seen. Not to mention Sun Dongqing. Even Yi Jifan couldn't help but shiver. Frowning, Yi Jifan said with a gloomy face, breaking the bones and connecting the tendons, "Yi Qian, don't go overboard." "Am I going overboard?" "Mayor Yi, since you've received benefits from me, you'd better behave yourself. The reason why I don't want to settle accounts with you is not because I'm afraid of you, but, Mayor Yi, you're so smart, so you should know what I mean. Her words made Yi Jifan's heart skip a beat. He suddenly remembered that his niece had a monstrous memory. He had originally wanted to suppress her with a few words, but now he gave up. When Ying heard that her parents had been forced into silence by Yi Qian's words, she gritted her teeth and said scornfully, "What are you so proud of? Just you wait, Yi Qian. I will make you inferior to me for the rest of your life." "Let's wait and see." Yi Qian raised his eyebrows, and a smile appeared on his face. He had an indescribable wildness. "I'll wait for you for the rest of my life. Ying, I've told you to wait. Just wait for me for the rest of your life." Someone who can't even get into the provincial first high school dares to compete with me. Ha! You overestimate yourself. When Ying heard this, it was as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. She giggled. "You've been inferior to me since the beginning, and now you want to compete with me? Dream on." Hearing this, Yi Jifan saw Yi Qian's smile gradually deepen, as if there was an indescribable meaning behind it. He didn't stop him, and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. He then heard Yi Qian say calmly, "The school that you treat like a treasure is a school that I can do without. With it, it won't be the icing on the cake. Without it, I will still be me." Chapter 327. Ying, you're still as ridiculous as ever. You've wasted Mayor Ye's painstaking efforts on you. After Yi Qian finished speaking, Yi Jifan finally realized why her smile was so deep. To his daughter, the provincial first high school was a treasure, but to Yi Qian, it was a worthless place. This was the difference, the biggest difference. She could easily get it, but she could also easily give it up. But his daughter, Ying, couldn't, because the provincial first high school was her goal. Ying also reacted. Her delicate face instantly twisted, and she screamed, "Yi Qian, don't even think about surpassing me. Don't even think about it in this lifetime. Hurry up and take her to the car." Yi Jifan clenched his jaw. He looked at Yi Qian's calm expression, then looked at his daughter's hysterical expression. It was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. After Sun, Dongxing dragged Yi Ying into the car. The scheming Yi Jifan sneered. "Yi Qian, you're still too inexperienced. If you want to compete with Ying, you'll have to see if I agree." He originally wanted to threaten Yi Qian, but who knew that when he turned to get into the car, he heard a voice behind him that was deeper and colder than his own, with a hint of murderous intent. "Behave yourself, Mayor Yi. Don't provoke me." The voice was cold and murderous, instantly making Yi Jifan's footsteps quicken. He turned his head and stared at the little girl who repeatedly threatened him, the mayor of a town. He saw that the smile on her face was still as calm as ever, and her posture was straight. She was clearly still a child, but she had an aura that made him tremble in fear. And her eyes were dark and cold. She wasn't joking. She was seriously warning him not to provoke her. On the way to the car, the gloomy Yi Jifan's mind was still filled with this meaningful sentence. It was filled with a threat that only he could understand. She must know something. He turned his head and looked at his daughter, whose face was full of unwillingness, and said in a low voice, Ying, remember, you must keep that jade pin well. Don't take it out for others to see." Sun Dongxing, who had always been taken advantage of by Yi Qian, got into the car with a straight face. At this moment, she was about to vent her anger on her husband. "You gave me a fake. Mom, can you keep your mouth shut?" Yi Ying, who was being dragged into the car, shouted, "If you didn't get out of the car, I would have been humiliated by Yi Qian, right? You don't have a brain. Don't implicate me in me." Yi Jifan, who was driving, was livid. It was not because of Sun Dongxing, but because of Yi Ying. He gripped the steering wheel tightly and shouted, "Ying, who gave you the guts to scold your own mother?" Yi, yes, Yi, Ying, Yi, and Ying, and Ying. Yi Qian's mood was not affected at all. The boys from the same village arrived at 6:30 sharp. Compared to the boys' excitement, Yi Qian was much calmer. When the car drove onto the winding mountain road, Yi Qian's line of sight towards the village suddenly froze. She saw Uncle Jin, standing at the entrance of the village where the children often played, waving his hand. Yi Qian's tears flowed down her face. She stretched her hand out of the car window and waved at Uncle General, even though she knew that he was too far away to hear. Yi Qian still shouted, "Go back quickly. I'll come back to see you soon." Chapter 328. Number 1 Middle School was the best middle school in Anyang City. It was divided into junior high school and senior high school. For the people of Anyang City, being admitted to number 1 middle school's senior high school was equivalent to being admitted to one of the top universities in the country. In addition, 6 students from number 1 middle school had been admitted to Hua University and Shi University, which made the school even more famous. It was also because of this that number 1 middle school's enrollment this year was so strict that it was almost harsh. Adhering to the principle of quality over quantity, many students who were originally studying at number 1 middle school did not get admitted to number 1 middle school. And those who did get admitted had to retake the exam and be assigned to different classes based on their grades. Yi Qian had been in the Tibetan area all this time, so he had no idea that number 1 middle school had caused a big commotion recently. Parents whose children were studying at number 1 middle school's junior high school but did not get admitted to number 1 middle school's senior high school all gather at the school gate on the first day of school. They held up red banners to protest the unfairness of this enrollment. Is there any justice in this world? Is there any law? Our children are studying at number 1 middle school, but they are not allowed to go to high school. Protest, protest, protest against the school's completely inhumane enrollment. Being assigned to different classes based on grades is clearly harming the students. All of us parents are protesting. These parents were not the only ones causing trouble at the gate of number 1 middle school. Some people who wanted to stir up trouble also joined in. Someone threw an egg at the school sign of number 1 middle school, and then the whole school gate became even more chaotic. As long as someone had something in their hands, they threw it at the school to show the unfair treatment of their children. Before Yi Qian and the boys from the same village could enter the school gate, the bus that was supposed to stop at number 1 middle school was stopped by the police. A policeman wearing a light green 95 police uniform walked up and glanced at Yi Qian. "Student, your parents didn't send you to school?" The boys from the same village had never dealt with the police before, but they had grown up in a village with an army, so they had some guts. Hearing this, he walked over and shielded Yi Qian behind him. He was a little scared, but he maintained his composure. His voice was a little tense as he replied, "No, both of us came here by ourselves. We didn't have any parents accompanying us. We are students from the town. We don't have an adult to send us off." When Yi Qian saw this, he gently patted the boy's tense shoulders and said with a smile, "Did something happen at school?" "I think," she pointed outside the bus. "These students didn't go to school. They're all standing outside. Something must have happened at school." What could possibly happen at school? In 1996, other than the return of Hong Kong, there didn't seem to be any major events that happened. However, the internet was still not developed in 1996. If something big really happened, it was normal for her not to know. Usually, it was the parents who asked if something had happened at school. Now that a student took the initiative to ask him, the policeman who stopped the car smiled and said, "You're quite smart. No wonder you could get into number 1 middle school." "You." As he said this, the policeman looked at Yi Qian. Why did he look a little familiar? Where did he see him? A criminal? Definitely not. But he did look familiar. He seemed to have seen him somewhere before. "Come on, student. Get off the bus with him. Remember to take your luggage." The policeman had an occupational disease and did not intend to let Yi Qian get off the bus just like that. Instead, he motioned for her and the boys from the same village to get off the bus with him. Chapter 329. The boy from the same village had the surname Zhang, and his name was Jingyi. Shuko village was a village with the surname Zhang, so there were quite a lot of people with the surname Zhang. When he saw that he still had to follow the police, he was still a high school student. No matter how brave he was still a young high school student. When he heard this, his legs went weak. Why do I have to get off the bus with you?" He was stuttering a little. When Yi Qian saw this, he turned around and smiled at him. "You're still a student. Nothing bad has happened. What are you afraid of? Something must have happened at the school. They're here to protect the students and their parents. Girls are more meticulous than boys. Your classmate is right. Hurry up and get off the bus. Don't waste the bus driver's time." When the police heard this, they turned around and smiled. "It has nothing to do with you students. Get off the bus." "It has nothing to do with the students?" Could it be the school and their parents? Yi Qian's gaze froze for a moment. Encountering such a situation at the beginning of school was indeed not something to be happy about. After getting off the bus, Yi Qian and Zhang Jingyi went straight to a convenience store on the road. The store was supposed to be a grocery store, but the police had temporarily recruited them to be on duty. There was also a group of students and parents outside the convenience store. The police walked quickly through the crowd and entered the convenience store. They lowered their heads and said a few words to their colleagues on duty. When they came out again, they waved at Yi Qian, who had not yet entered. Come. The sun is bright outside. Come here and enjoy the fan. Also, the two of you, pass the admission notice to Teacher Fu. Let him help you with the registration procedures." It turned out that the school could not handle the normal admission procedures. In order not to delay the start of school, the registration could only be done by 2 police officers and a school teacher outside. This was one of the registration points. There were 2 more registration points outside. The parents were causing trouble at the school entrance, but the school's normal admission procedures were still carried out. It was not much of an impact. Yi Qian took out the notice from his bag and handed it over. The policeman took the notice and opened it to take a look. His gaze immediately fell on the name Yi Qian. He then looked up and passed the notice back to Teacher Fu. "You don't have any students with the same name, right?" "Yi Qian, this girl is here to report." Although they were communicating in a low voice, Yi Qian had undergone hellish training after all. For someone like Yi Qian, who was close to the level of a world-class sniper, even the slightest movement could not escape her eyes and ears. Not to mention, the teacher and the police were talking right under his nose. How could he not hear them clearly? "I'm Yi Qian, Teacher Fu. Is there a problem?" The indifferent Yi Qian smiled and asked politely, "I'm reporting according to the date on the notice. I've already prepared all the other materials for the report." She did not want to ask too much, but she remembered Yi Jifan's harsh words early in the morning. "Yi Qian, you're still too inexperienced. If you want to compete with Ying, you'll have to see if I agree or not." These words clearly showed that he did not want her to have an easy time at number 1 middle school. Now that she asked one more question, if she could find out something, she might as well not go to number 1 middle school. Teacher Fu looked at Yi Qian. Her expression was slightly dark and unclear. She stood up with the authority of a teacher and said, "Go and sit on the side. I'll call the school management." The change in her expression was only a matter of a few breaths, but it made Yi Qian's eyes darken instantly. Based on the current situation, there was an 80% chance that he did something. Chapter 330. Especially when Teacher Fu took away her acceptance letter, Yi Qian instinctively took a few steps forward and blocked Teacher Fu's way with a smile. "Teacher, you should pass me the acceptance letter. You can help me with the process after you finish your call." Zhang Jingyi was dumbfounded. Yi Qian had guts. She was really brave. She even dared to block the way of a teacher. Yi Qian, he didn't know what to say. He only felt that the atmosphere was a little strange, so he subconsciously called out. Then he went silent. The students and parents outside didn't notice anything strange. They were still squeezing in front of other teachers to complete the process. The police officer who brought Yi Qian in was also a little confused, but he knew the importance of an acceptance letter to a student. He smiled and said, "Teacher Fu, go ahead. I'll take the acceptance letter and let my colleague register it." "No, you don't have to register it for now. Wait for me to call back." Teacher Fu probably didn't expect a student to dare to block a teacher. After the initial shock, she panicked a little when a police officer joined in. She stuffed the acceptance letter into Yi Qian's hands and hurriedly said, "Wait here." Holding the crumpled acceptance letter in her hand, Yi Qian sighed softly in her heart. It seemed like there were some things that she couldn't decide. Yi Jifan's ability had once again exceeded her expectations. He He was actually able to extend his hand into the city. In her previous life, Yi Jifan was a successful government official. He was promoted to the position of deputy governor. If he wasn't capable, how could he become the deputy governor of a province? Moreover, Grandpa Jin repeatedly reminded her not to go against Yi Jifan. She only needed to give him a proper warning. It was clear that Grandpa Jin also knew about Yi Jifan's ability. If you don't listen to your elders, you will suffer. Yi Qian was glad that she hadn't fallen out with Yi Jifan to the point where they would be at each other's throats when they met. Number 1 middle school. She definitely couldn't stay. Zhang Jingyi, you go ahead and register first. We were so focused on rushing to school that we didn't even call home. I'll go out and make a call first. After Yi Qian made up his mind, he completely gave up on the idea of studying at number 1 middle school. He then said to the policeman, who was still confused, "Hello, I'm going out for a while. I'll be back later." Although the police officers didn't understand what was going on, they had a vague feeling that something was wrong. They didn't stop Yi Qian. After he left, they asked their colleague who was in charge of registration, "What happened?" "I'm not sure. A person who looked like the head of the school came over at around 9 o'clock. He said that if he saw a new student named Yi Qian registering, he told us not to worry. He said that there were some problems with her exam." The police officer in charge of the registration didn't know what happened either. He shook his head and said, "The school's matters are not something we can figure out. Everyone had their own duties. If it weren't for the parents protesting against the school today, these civilian police officers wouldn't have been able to register the students for the school." The police officer who brought Yi Qian over frowned. "There's such a thing? How could they send a notice if there were problems with the exam? Hey, don't you think that girl just now looked a little familiar? She's the girl that Sister Zhang mentioned before. She's very good. She represented the country in the Australian Mathematical Olympiad. She's the only Chinese student, Yi Qian. Of course you'd recognize her. We've all seen her in the newspapers. She's quite a good student. How could she have problems with the exam?" Chapter 331. While the two policemen were discussing in low voices, Yi Qian ran to a supermarket in front of them and called Principal Chun. "Uncle Chun, I'm afraid I won't be able to study at number 1 middle school. Yi Jifan has reached out to number 1 middle school, and there's a problem with the registration process. Tell me more details." Today was also the first day of school in Fujian town, so Principal Chun was very busy. However, when he received Yi Qian's call, his expression turned cold, and he put all his work aside. "Don't worry, tell me slowly." Yi Qian told him about his temporary guesses one by one. He chuckled and said, "No wonder Yi Jifan said those harsh words to me this morning, saying that I can't compare to Ying. It turns out that he's been waiting for me for a long time. Since he had frequent contacts with the city's leaders, it was indeed possible for him to reach out and tamper with her enrollment. His hands are indeed long. Girl, you should continue with the registration process and find out what's going on and what they're trying to do. Also, I'll call the leaders of number 1 middle school and report your enrollment first." Principal Chun still didn't know that Yi Qian wasn't even considering number 1 middle school. As he spoke, he took out his phone book and looked for the leaders of number 1 middle school. Yi Qian pondered for a moment, then pursed his lips and said, "Uncle Chun, since Yi Jifan is forcing me to not be able to study peacefully, I don't plan on letting Yi Ying be peacefully anymore. Don't call the leaders of number 1 middle school. If they've tacitly agreed to this, then it's useless even if you call them." "Are you sure?" Principal Chun had always respected Yi Qian's decisions. He said in a low voice, "If you miss this registration, you might not even have the chance to attend high school this year." Her words were meant to remind Yi Qian to reconsider, but who knew that when Yi Qian, who was frowning slightly, heard her words, a light flashed across his eyes. His dark eyes suddenly shone like stars. "If I don't study this year, next year, I'll retake the exam and directly enter year 2. What do you think?" There was silence on the other end of the line. After at least 3 minutes of silence, Principal Chun laughed out loud. "Little Jian, do you know what you look like? In the northern underworld, there is a fish named Kuan. The Kuan was so huge that no one knew how many thousands of miles it was. It transformed into a bird, and its name was Peng. The rock's back was thousands of miles long. It flew in anger, and its wings were like the clouds in the sky. You are this Cohen. In the future, you will be the pung that hits 3,000 miles in the water and flies 90,000 miles in the air. I don't have any objections. As long as you think you have the ability to train while completing high school, I don't have any objections even if you take 2 years off from school. His deep, powerful, and kind laughter rang out. Yiqian also laughed along. With the support of an elder, she had the right to be willful. After laughing, Yiqian's expression gradually became more serious. Although her clear voice was soft, it was sonorous and powerful. In 1 year, I won't be worse than them. I definitely won't. Taking a year off from school was indeed not a difficult thing for her. Don't call first. Wait for me to confirm things on my end, then I'll come back and tell you. In any case, I have to let some people know that the things they do are not a threat to me at all. With someone supporting her, Yiqian's voice became lighter. If they want to control me academically, they can dream on. By they, she was naturally referring to Yi Jifan. After hanging up the phone, Yiqian returned to the small store. At this time, she saw a middle-aged man wearing a shirt, a bow tie, and a pair of glasses. He looked like a school leader standing under the shade of a tree and looking around. Chapter 332. After Yi Jian glanced at him, a faint sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. This was the vice principal of No. 1 Middle School. She had seen him in the photo before and recognized him at first glance. Even the vice principal was here. Her application was quite interesting. Yiqian was not in a hurry, so she did not push her way in. Instead, she waited in line for the parents and students in front of her to register first. What was the hurry? Zhang Jingyi, who had finished the registration, came out and saw Yiqian still in line. He was sweating profusely as he pulled her out. Yiqian, why are you still waiting in line? Hurry up and go. I saw the vice principal. He's waiting for you. Then he said enviously, you're still the best. It's good that your grades are good. Even the vice principal is here. Don't be envious. My instincts tell me that my application today is not going to go well. Yiqian handed her luggage to Zhang Jingyi. Help me look after this. Go rest under the tree. I'll be out soon. It was better not to let him know about her relationship with the school. It was not a good thing anyway. Why should she ruin his impression of the school? Zhang Jingyi thought she was joking. He took her luggage and said, Okay, I'll wait for you outside. The application is quick. All you have to do is hand in your acceptance letter, your photo, and fill in the application form. It'll take a few minutes. It might take a few minutes for others, but not for Yiqian. After she sat down, Teacher Fu immediately stood up and asked the vice principal, who was also sweating profusely, to sit down. She even gestured for Yiqian to take out her acceptance letter. Take out your acceptance letter. The vice principal will speak to you personally. For the vice principal to speak to you personally, it meant that you should feel honored. In front of the school teachers, Yi Jian had always been a well-behaved student. Hearing this, she took the notice without hesitation and maintained the courtesy of a student to a teacher. She first greeted the teacher and then said, Principal, if you have anything to say, you can tell me directly. I came alone without my parents. It's like this. The vice principal cleared his throat and looked at Yiqian sternly. After we sent out your acceptance letter, the school received a call reporting that you helped someone cheat in the exam. Student Yiqian, your actions have already seriously violated the code of conduct that a student should have. Through our investigation, combined with the descriptions of several students who were around your seat at the time, we can completely confirm that you have indeed violated the exam rules. However, due to your excellent grades and the fact that you have won a gold medal in the World Mathematical Olympiad, our school has decided to make an exception and admit you. However, the vice principal's voice was as serious as that of a judge in a courtroom. His one word could decide Yiqian's life and death. He paused intentionally, but when he saw that the student sitting opposite him had no change in expression and even had a slight smile on his face, the vice principal's intentional pause became somewhat awkward. What were students most afraid of hearing? The number one thing was cheating in exams. That was even more frightening than skipping class. Therefore, when he said this, Yi Qian should have been afraid and should have been quite anxious. After all, this had to do with whether or not he could enter high school. However, Yi Qian did not panic and even smiled. This was not something the vice principal could accept. Chapter 333. What? Do you think I'm joking? The vice principal tapped his clenched fist on the table. His expression was solemn as he rebuked. This is not a joke. If it weren't for your good grades, the school would have taken back this admission letter, and your grades would be nullified. Yi Qian was unmoved, but the parents lining up behind him were shocked. What was going on? Good grades. How could they be nullified? Copied? Discussions broke out as they looked at Yi Qian inquisitively. Some people began to point at him and even stop the registration process. But this was not the result the vice principal wanted. He didn't want to scare the other students or parents. He wanted to scare Yi Qian. This is not a joke. Yi Qian, we know that your grades are good, but your actions have discounted them. After discussion with the school, we have decided to be lenient with you. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows slightly. She didn't say a word and looked much calmer than the vice principal. At the very least, in the eyes of the police officers who were helping with the registration process, this girl had a faint smile on her face. She was even calmer than a leader. The vice principal felt his back drenched in sweat after hearing her raise her eyebrows. He wanted to drink some water to moisten his throat, but his hands grabbed empty air. This was not his office. Naturally, there was no cup of water on his desk. Yi Qian, who hadn't said much the entire time, chuckled softly when he saw this. Finally, he showed mercy and said, "So, what's the result?" As if a noble had opened his mouth, the vice principal let out a sigh of relief and immediately said, "The result is that you will still be accepted by our school, but you will only be an auditing student. The preferential treatment that the school gave you will also be nullified." So this was the result of the punishment. It did sound very lenient. The expressions of the police officers changed slightly. This sounded like preferential treatment, but in reality, it was too unfair. The status of an auditing student would make the student unable to raise his head in front of his classmates. The school's method of punishment was worse than directly rejecting the student. Their gazes fell on Yi Qian. Now it was up to this student to see what he thought. If he wanted to stay and study, he could only accept it. After the vice principal finished speaking, a confident smile appeared on his face. For a student, he had no choice but to accept such a method. Not only would the school not lose an outstanding student, but it would also give the leaders an explanation. It was the best of both worlds. When the parents and students who were listening in from behind heard this, their faces immediately showed expressions of disdain. It was disdain for Yi Qian. His ancestors must have done a lot of good deeds to be able to become an auditing student at number 1 middle school with his good grades. Countless people outside wanted to enter number 1 middle school, but they couldn't. Everyone had calculated everything well, but they had overlooked Yi Qian. Would she accept it? Oh, so that's how to deal with it. Yi Qian smiled slightly and stood up. Then he lowered his eyes and looked down at the vice principal like a high and mighty god. He said slowly, "The way to deal with it sounds pretty good. At least I can still study at number 1 middle school." The vice principal thought that she had agreed. When he heard this, he immediately said, "That's right. This is the biggest exception that the school can make for you. You have to cherish this rare learning opportunity. In the future..." Chapter 334. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw that the notice that was supposed to be on the table was already in Yi Qian's hand. With a tearing sound, the notice that represented a student was allowed to enter the school was directly torn into 2 halves by Yi Qian. "What should I do? Do you think this method is helping me?" "Unfortunately, I'm sorry, Vice Principal, I'm not interested anymore." Amidst the gasps behind her, Yi Qian smiled brightly. Her dark eyes were filled with disdain. She used her actions to reject this so-called generosity. "I'm not interested in number 1 middle school. I can even reject the capital's experimental number 1 middle school and the provincial number 1 middle school, let alone a small number 1 middle school. Don't be angry. I'm a talent. Isn't it a little arrogant? I've always been humble. Today, I'm being arrogant. It feels pretty good." The notice wasn't just torn in half. Under the vice principal's wide eyes and everyone else's incredulous gaze, Yi Qian tore the notice to the point that it couldn't even be pieced back together. With a light wave of her hand, the notice turned into a paper butterfly. With a blow from the fan, it scattered everywhere. She giggled and said, "I'm not coming to school anymore. As for the books, I'm not going to study anymore. Don't be surprised. I'm definitely not an impulsive person. Don't be angry. Although I'm a student, I've always made my own decisions. Don't glare at me. If the school can frame a student like this, I really don't want to study anymore." After the notice was torn and blown by the fan, the parents and students were dumbfounded. This was too much. Why was this child so impulsive? Aya, you're too impulsive. Everything was fine. Where are your parents? Quick, get them here. You've already been admitted. If the school wants to talk to you, you should get your parents here. How can you tear the notice yourself? Vice principal, shouldn't you discuss this with a student's parents? How can you tell a child directly? Once the notice was torn, the parents' reactions weren't normal. Thinking of their own children, the parents were worried. If something happened to their children and the school didn't look for the parents, then wouldn't it be a mess? The vice principal didn't know that Yi Qian had such a trick up her sleeve. No one expected this. At this moment, it wasn't the school forcing Yi Qian, but Yi Qian forcing the school. Yi Qian didn't care so much. She smiled and said calmly in the midst of the discussion, "In the exam, they said that I was copied by other students. Vice principal, why don't you call all the students around me to come here? Zhou Yong, Lu Yang, dying, and in Jiao of dying, and dying middle school, and Jiao. And Jiao was taking a math exam at 11:13 in the morning. She did hint at me to copy her answers, but the invigilator soon found out and warned me at 11:15. That teacher is Mr. Song from Chengtang Middle School. Other than that, no other students have asked me. Because we've checked their answers before, it's a piece of cake for them to get into #1 middle school. If I'm not wrong, they'll definitely come to school today. Why don't we confront them?" She was truly amazing. She remembered everything so clearly. She could even remember the time and names of the people. No matter how one looked at it, she seemed to have come prepared. Chapter 335. The vice principal, who had finally stopped sweating, was now sweating profusely. Seeing that Yi Qian still dared to force him, he slammed his palm on the table and shouted, "How dare you? Do you still want to study?" "Yes, of course I do." In the face of the angry vice principal, Yi Qian's smile was still so indifferent. When she answered, "Yes," the vice principal snorted and pointed at the torn letter. He said angrily, "You want to do it? You still know how to think. Look at what you've done." "I do want to study, but even if I do, I definitely won't study at your school." Yi Qian was not in a hurry. She spoke slowly and with a smile on her face. She replied slowly, "So, I really don't plan to study. I'm really sorry to trouble you to come here personally. I don't need the school to make things so difficult for me. I won't study, and I won't enter the school. Everyone will be happy." After saying that, Yi Qian winked playfully at the vice principal. She turned around and left the vice principal's line of sight in a path that automatically opened up for her. This outcome was really something that no one could have expected. By the time the vice principal, whose face had turned the color of pig liver, chased after her, Yi Qian had already disappeared. As for the people behind him, he received the adoration of Yi Qian from the students. What a character! She tore the notice and didn't want to study in high school. How could she be so cool, so unique? If it were them, no one would dare. It's that girl who won the gold medal in Australia. Oh my God, so awesome. So awesome. No wonder, with her results, only she has the right to choose the school. If I were that good, I could also say something so unique like I won't study. But I didn't. I tried so hard to get into #1 middle school. She even rejected the provincial #1 middle school and the capital's #1 middle school. The vice principal, who had not left yet, almost vomited blood when he heard this. A student tore the notice and even said she didn't want to study in front of him. This. How was he going to explain it when he got back? "Principal, this is a little troublesome. Yi Qian directly tore up our school's acceptance letter and directly said in front of the students and parents that she didn't want to study. Standing under the scorching sun, the sweaty vice principal immediately called the principal, who was in a discussion with the city leaders. This matter is completely out of our school's expectations. What do you think we should do? The principal of number 1 middle school was already very busy at this time. We heard this. His head hurt even more. Why doesn't this child listen to the teacher? So what if she became an auditing student? She could enjoy all the educational resources that the school should have. I'm still in meeting here. When I'm done, I'll come and persuade her personally. Tell her first that the school has its own difficulties. We can only try our best to fight for her. The principal of number 1 middle school was also helpless. Of course, he wanted to keep a good student, but the higher-ups had secretly given the order. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only do this. The main point was, he was the one who got the auditing student. The vice principal's expression became even uglier. She left. When I chased after her, she was already gone. Yi Qian, who had made up her mind to leave, of course would not let the vice principal find her. She found Zhang Jingyi and said to him in a carefree manner, "I'm sorry. I can't stay with you in number 1 middle school for the 3rd year of high school. I'm going to take a break from school. Study hard, Zhang Jingyi. I have faith in you. All the best." Chapter 336. The boy from the same village, Zhang Jingyi, who was standing outside, did not know what had happened. He saw Yi Jian carrying her luggage as if she was stepping on hot wheels and directly jumping onto a bus that was going somewhere. Goodbye. She was not afraid of not studying. She was afraid that she would be in trouble if the vice principal caught up with her, if she did not walk faster. Yi Jifan. Oh, Yi Jifan, I will grant you your wish this year. She did not want to study in high school for 3 years. Yi Qian had never wanted to be too far away from Principal Chun and Uncle General. She had enough excuses to take a year off from school. That night, she happily returned to Fujian town. She did not know that she had once again become the biggest news in the city. She tore up the notice in front of so many classmates and announced that she was not going to study anymore. She had to have the right to be arrogant. Coincidentally, Yi Qian had the right to be arrogant again. In an instant, the entire Anyang city was in an uproar because of Yi Qian. Number 1 middle school, which was already at the center of the storm, was once again suppressed by public opinion. When Secretary Wu found out about this, he smashed 3 cups and even broke a chair in his office. Corruption, corruption, bureaucrats, bureaucrats, incurable, incurable. All their efforts were in vain. It was a huge setback to the education system in the city. It was no wonder that Secretary Wu was angry. Principal Chun took Secretary Wu's call and said, "Secretary Wu, I was worried that the child would be ruined if she went to school. I am relieved that she did not. This girl is smart. If she does not go to school this year, then so be it. It will be the same next year." There was an arrogant Yi Qian. She had to have a family behind her to support her. Secretary Wu had nothing else to say. He sighed and said, "It was my fault. I almost caused Yi Qian to fail." There was no mistake. At least, Yi Qian was happy to take a leave of absence, so it was not considered a mistake. Secretary Wu was not the only one who called. The next day, Principal Chun received a call from Principal Chow, a provincial first high school. The moment he opened his mouth, the principal questioned, "Old Chun, what the hell is going on? Did number 1 middle school have an explanation? He even forced a good student to drop out of school?" He tore up the notice on the spot. There must be an explanation for this. Their provincial first high school had gritted their teeth and swallowed their blood to let go of a good seedling. Who would have thought that the school that had accepted her didn't cherish her and actually forced her to drop out? Get Yi Qian to report to the provincial first high school in the next 2 days. Our school's doors will be open to her unconditionally. Principal Chow had seen Yi Qian's abilities with his own eyes. He had even personally sent her to Beijing before going overseas to participate in the competition. He had 100% confidence in Yi Qian's character. He firmly believed that Yi Qian was worth waiting for. When Principal Chun heard this, His eyes were full of smiles. He said in a clear voice, "Old Chow, I'll stop here. Thank you very much. As for where this child will study next year, we haven't decided yet. To tell you the truth, this summer, Yi Qian went through all the high school textbooks. I also gave her a test. A typical key university won't be a problem for her. So, it's not a big deal for her to take a leave of absence for a year. I'll thank you on behalf of that child." After listening for a while, Principal Chow asked tentatively, "So, Yi Qian wanted to take a leave of her own accord. You guessed right. I just found out that this child doesn't want to study for 3 years in high school. She thinks it's a waste of her time. As for me, I support her." Principal Chun did not hide anything and chatted with Principal Chow with a smile on his face. After hanging up the phone, Principal Chow leisurely took a sip of herbal tea. TSK, TSK, TSK. On such a hot day, a sip of herbal tea is really cooling and comfortable. Chapter 337. There was a call from the provincial government, followed by a call from Dean Li in Beijing. Like Principal Chow, they hoped that Yi Qian could report to their school within the next 2 days. The examinee's file had to be entered into the education system as soon as possible. Once the time limit was over, it could not be submitted again. Principal Chen's answer was still, let Yi Qian take a year off from school. If there was anything else, they could talk about it next year. Who was the happiest about this? Naturally, it was Yi Jifan's family. Yi Jifan, who was still handling the admission procedures at the provincial first school, received the call. He suppressed his happiness as he bought daily necessities for Yiying. Instead, he said sadly, this child. Hey. I just wanted her to admit her mistake. Who knew that she would be so rebellious and disrespectful to the teachers? She even dared to tear up the notice. This matter has nothing to do with you. I will definitely apologize to you when I get back. It's really, hey, I didn't think that she would be so presumptuous. He sighed and apologized, as if he was really heartbroken. After the call ended, Yi Jifan laughed heartily as he paid the bill. This little girl dared to compete with him. This time she will remember. Ying still could not believe it. Dad, are you sure she really tore up the notice? Really? Of course, why would I lie to you? Yi Jifan placed the toothpaste and toothbrush on the table and said to his overjoyed daughter, Ying, Yi Qian was never your opponent. You don't have to treat her as your opponent. Do you see that? I usually don't do anything. Once I do, I will directly destroy her future. Remember, Ying, if you don't do anything, you must plan. If you plan before you act, that is the best plan. You are the only one who suffered losses in the past. His words were much more profound than Sun Dongqing's. It also made Ying more convinced. Ying was so happy that her entire face was flushed red. She said excitedly, I know. I will listen to you, Dad. Yi Qian, what right do you have to fight with me? Ha, what right do you have? I am now studying at the provincial first school, and you can only quit school. You want me to wait? Fine, I'll wait. I'm waiting to see you make a fool of yourself. I'm waiting to see you live a life worse than a pig or a dog. His smile was not only sinister, but also ferocious. It was as if she could already see Yi Qian's miserable days in the future. She would be the king, and Yi Qian would be her slave. Work hard, Ying. Dad can help you now, but you have to rely on yourself in the future. Yi Qian is no longer a threat. She didn't even study in high school. No matter how good she is, she can only live at the bottom of society. Yi Jifan constantly reminded Yi Ying that she needed to use her own means to get the life she wanted. Don't always think about Yi Qian. You need to become someone that she can never match up to. When she thought about how Yi Qian would never be as good as herself, Yi Ying felt that the haze from before was swept away. She hugged Yi Jifan's arm and said coquettishly, Dad, I know. Don't worry. I used to throw tantrums because of Yi Qian, but I won't anymore. She was already inferior to me, and she will still be inferior to me in the future. I will work hard for you. I definitely will. Sun Dongqing, who was hanging the clothes outside, didn't know about this. When she found out that they had returned to Fujian town, Yi Jifan told her. She knew, and not long after, the villagers of Shuku village found out. They all felt sorry for Yi Qian. He was such a good child, and he had a bright future, but he ruined himself. Chapter 338. 2 months after school started, the news of Yi Qian's suspension from school still hadn't died down. Yi Jifan, who had always been cautious, asked around for 2 months and confirmed that Yi Qian's name was not in any of the high schools in the city, nor Yi Qian's name in any of the high schools in the province. He was still worried and used his connections to check Yi Qian's household register. It was only when he found out that Yi Qian was still in Fujian town that he truly felt relieved. Yi Qian didn't repeat his studies, nor did he enter any of the high schools. It was as if he had completely disappeared. In October, the principal Chun of Fujian town resigned due to health reasons, and the position of the high school principal was handed over to another veteran who could continue to guard the underground oil depot. In October of the same year, Uncle Jin, who had lived in Shuku village for more than 20 years, said that he was going to look for his relatives in Sichuan province. He left Shuku village with the village chief, Zhang Difu. Yi Qian, Uncle Jin, and Principal Chen's figures faded out of Shuku village and Fujian town. Even the people in the army didn't know where the 3 generations had gone. They only knew that they had gone to wherever the hardships were. Heavy snow was already falling. In one night, the entire Anyang city became a world of silver and white. Winter of 1996 had arrived. Anyang city of the southern province welcomed its first snow of the winter. Children were happily having snowball fights in the snow. The children's laughter added the most vibrant colors to the entire city. Drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians were all very careful for fear of accidents. Only a jeep suddenly appeared at the intersection. It sped up again, stirring up waves of snow, and disappeared around the bend in the road in the blink of an eye. The driver's deep black eyes contained a faint smile. His elegant and handsome face contained a smile like the spring breeze in March. He steadily drove the car to the entrance of No. 1 Middle School. "Hello, I'm looking for Yi Qian from grade 1 class." A tall man in a military coat casually rested his arm on the windowsill of the guard post. He took off his gloves, revealing a pair of slender hands that were as long as a pianist's. He picked up the ballpoint pen used for registration and wrote down his name stroke by stroke. He smiled at the guard at the door. "Yi Jian, grade 1, class 1. The guard at the gate was a security guard in his 30s. When he heard this, he glanced at the young man in a military coat. When his gaze landed on the man's military cap, his eyes flickered slightly. Xia Jinyuan put down the ballpoint pen. He could see something strange from the other party's expression. There was a hint of seriousness in his soft voice. "What's wrong? What happened to her?" "Comrade, this Yi Jian." The guard opened his mouth awkwardly. After thinking for a while, he lowered his voice as if he was afraid that someone would overhear him. "She didn't come to our school. Why don't you go outside and ask around? Ask around at the small store in front. I'm just a security guard. There are some things that I can't say. If you ask someone else, they will know." "She didn't come to school?" Xia Jinyuan clenched his fists. He said, "Thank you." Then he strode away. He started the car and stopped in front of a roadside convenience store in the blink of an eye. He stopped the car and bought a pack of chewing gum. He fiddled with it without eating it. Looking at the shop owner, who was sitting by the fire, bored, Xia Jinyuan pointed at the stove and smiled. "Brother, let's go to your store to warm up. I'm waiting for someone." In his military uniform, he took off his military cap and naturally placed it flat in the palm of his hand. He then fastened it to his waist. His actions were indescribably dignified and masculine. Seeing this, the shop owner laughed loudly. "Whatever. Do you want some hot tea? I'll make you a cup." His action, dressed in military uniform, won the shop owner's favor. Chapter 339. There's no need to trouble yourself. I'm just waiting for someone. Class is about to end. Xia Jinyuan sat down. Even his sitting posture was a habit of the army. His hat was gently placed on his knees to maintain his military posture. He was always cautious that he was a soldier and would never spoil his military image outside. More importantly, this was also a characteristic of physics. When one's hands were placed on his knees, it formed the most stable triangle. When one stood up, it was easy to immediately exert force to stand up. Xia Jinyuan's plan was to leave immediately after asking about Yi Qian. The shop owner warmly poured tea and came over. When he sat down and saw Xia Jinyuan's appearance, he subconsciously straightened his back and started to chat with him. Number 1 middle school is really good. This year, 6 students from Tsinghua University and Western University took the college entrance examination. Now that it's famous, all the students outside are squeezing their heads to get in. Everyone wants to go to number 1 middle school and enter the top universities. The shop owner was bored guarding the shop alone, so when a soldier came to chat with him, he warmly introduced number 1 middle school while drinking hot tea. Xia Jinyuan wanted to know what exactly happened to Yi Qian here, so naturally, he deliberately guided the shop owner around number 1 middle school. Hearing this, the shop owner smiled and said, "Not everyone wants to study at number 1 middle school. I just went to the school to look for someone and heard 2 parents delivering clothes to a student outside. They heard a student named Yi Qian. She seems to be Yi Qian." This little girl was a celebrity in Anyang City some time ago. Since they were talking about other people's affairs, the shop owner described the scene that happened that day in detail. "It's a pity for the little girl. It's really a pity. I even specially looked up last year's People's Daily. She was really the little girl who won the gold medal in the mathematical Olympiad. She was stingy with the school and left as soon as she tore the notice. Say, why are children nowadays so temperamental? It wasn't easy for her to get into the school. Since the school didn't cancel her results, they still admitted her. So what if she's an auditing student? As long as she's studying at number 1 middle school, it's fine. Tore the notice? Didn't cancel her results? Auditing student?" Xia Jinyuan, who had grasped the main point, asked in detail what had happened. After listening to him, his handsome face turned cold. His little fox was being treated so unfairly. How could someone as prideful as her be broken by a basin of groundless, dirty water? It was even more impossible for him to be a mere auditing student. After drinking the tea, Xia Jinyuan was clear about the ins and outs of the matter. After he left the snack bar, he took out a black and white mobile phone that had been popular in Beijing recently and was worth more than 10,000 yuan. He dialed a set of numbers. "Help me investigate someone. Yi Qian, she just turned 16. Find out which school she's studying at in Nan Province. I'll give you a call in 10 minutes. After the phone call, Xia Jinyuan, who had not slept for several consecutive nights, closed his eyes and rested. He did not panic, for he knew very well that it was impossible for his little fox to drop out of school. If she wanted to be admitted to a military academy, she had to be studying at high school. Regardless of high school or junior high school, as long as she was in school and her student ID was there, he would be able to find her. In less than 10 minutes, the phone rang. The person on the other end said something, and Xia Jinyuan, who had a calm expression just now, suddenly opened his eyes. His voice was as cold as the snow outside. "Have you checked all the schools in the province?" Chapter 340. The person on the other end of the phone was a woman with a gentle voice. She was dressed in an expensive suit. She was wearing a suit and a pair of black heels that were at least 8 centimeters high. She leaned against the desk and said calmly, "I did. Her student ID hasn't been changed, and her file is still in the province. In other words, she's suspended from school. She didn't attend high school or repeat her 3rd year of junior high school. She's suspended from school to retain her student status." Suspended from school to retain her student status. After hearing this, Xia Jinyuan's tense nerves were all relaxed at once. Uncle Chun leaving Fujian High School, Uncle Jin leaving the village, and Little Fox suspending from school. All of this made sense. The 2 old revolutionaries didn't take any action and left immediately. This meant that they supported Yi Qian's suspension. Now that they left Fujian town together, it looked like 3 generations of people had agreed to go on a trip together. His thin lips curled into a smile. She was really daring. She could even do something like taking a leave of absence. Little Fox, what medicine are you selling in your gourd?" With Uncle Chin's abilities, weapons, Little Fox, and Uncle Jin, the 3 generations of people wouldn't have to worry about anything. He bet that she would only suspend from school for a year. After a year, his little fox would definitely return. Help me investigate what happened with Yi Qian. Just investigate Yi Jifan. There's no need to investigate anyone else. He didn't believe that little fox's admission to school was simply because she cheated on the exam. Someone must have done something. There wasn't a second suspect. Yi Jifan was the only one. The woman on the phone obviously had a good relationship with Xia Jinyuan. She laughed when she heard this. Young Master Xia, you seem to care a lot about this young lady. Aren't you going to chat with me? Miss Xia, as a career woman, you're not suitable to talk about this. Old Master Xia is still waiting for you to bring back a brother-in-law. Xia Jinyuan finished speaking lazily. As he started the car, the woman said coldly, "Goodbye." He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, and the car dashed into the heavy snow. This time, the speed of the car was much slower than before. It did not exceed 30 kilometers per hour and steadily drove out of Ice City. Xia Jinyuan already knew the reason for what he wanted to investigate even before the car left Ice City. You want to ruin little Fox's future? Mayor Yi. Oh, Mayor Yi, the military already has little Fox's file. Do you think you could destroy it just because you want to? She's a little fox that the country wants to nurture. What ability do you have to destroy her? But what was the little fox going to do? Did he need to make a move? Xia Jinyuan, who had been driving the car out of AY City, could not make up his mind. It would be convenient for him to make a move, but he could not figure out what little fox was thinking, so he had to be more cautious. It was better to wait until he got in touch with little fox. It would be easier for him to make a move once he knew how she was doing. After driving for a few hundred meters, the car stopped by the roadside. Without turning off the engine, he picked up the phone again and dialed a group of numbers. This group of numbers was to find out where the 3rd generation was. Brother, check on the 2 elders and the girl. I'll give you their ages and names later. Photos? Yes, but I have to wait until I have a computer. As his clear and lazy voice rang out, a man's joyful laughter could be heard from the other end of the line. Chapter 341. The man said something that made Xia Jinyuan raise his eyebrows. You're full of nonsense, aren't you? Goodbye then. No, I'm scared of you. I was just talking too much. Send it to me, and I'll check it immediately. The man on the other end of the phone panicked. Who would dare to reject Mr. Xia? He was a ruthless character. He looked gentle, but when he was ruthless, he had single-handedly destroyed a hooligan's nest, and the hooligans had to thank him for it. Xia Jinyuan chuckled and looked outside. Thank you, brother. It's not convenient for me to show my face now. I'll thank you when I get back to Beijing. All right, with Mr. Xia's words, I'll go through fire and water for you. The man on the other end of the phone agreed without hesitation. His tone was familiar, and it was obvious that he was close to Xia Jinyuan. With Mr. Xia's ability, it was easy for him to find out where Yi Qian and the others were. Even though the internet was not developed in 1996, and there was no real name system for buying tickets, it only took half a day to find them. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the snow in Anyang City was getting heavier and heavier. The snow was so heavy that the pedestrians could not see the road clearly. Xia Jinyuan, who had already received news, knew that although it was snowing heavily in the southern province, the place where his little fox was located was scorching hot. 3 generations had gone so far away. The training arranged by the world-class sniper was indeed hellish training. After leaving the highlands and arriving at the desert, he admired the little fox's perseverance. It was unrealistic to go to the desert with only a week's leave. Xia Jinyuan returned to Beijing for 2 days of leave and invited the friends who had helped him out for dinner. On the 5th day of leave, he returned to the Snowfield Brigade. Damn, you came back early. You should have given me the extra leave. When Han Jing saw him appear at the base with his luggage, he said bitterly, I feel like I haven't rested enough and I have to report back. Hey, how did you come back early? Seeing Xia Jinyuan's expressionless face, Han Jing took a closer look and frowned. That's not right. You didn't look for your little fox? F***CK. Little fox is ignoring you? You guys broke up? Ha ha ha. Did they really break up? From puzzlement to schadenfreude, It only took a few seconds. When have I ever dated an underage girl? If there's no pursuit, how can there be a breakup? Xia Jinyuan, who had been ignoring him, finally glanced at him and sneered. Do you think I'm like you? When you return to Beijing, 3 girlfriends will break up with you. Young Master Han, the news about you has spread all over the capital. F***CK. Who the F***CK is spouting nonsense and ruining my reputation. What do you mean by breaking up with me? I'm the one who doesn't want them. Han Zhang's face was a little pale, especially when he heard Xia Jinyuan's chuckle. His self-esteem took a big hit, and he jumped up to explain, Damn it, I've always been the one to dump people. When have you ever seen me being dumped by a woman? Xia Jinyuan chuckled at Han Zhang's explanation. He didn't care about this kind of thing. Before he returned to the dormitory, J5, who was dressed in a training uniform, walked towards him. You're back at the right time. There's an important meeting at 7 p.m. Someone from the top is here, a big shot. The mission is A-level in hearts. A-level in hearts represented a mission within the country. Okay. Xia Jinyuan looked at the time. There were still 46 minutes to 7 p.m., which was just enough time to check the map. Chapter 342. After putting away the luggage, Xia Jinyuan took out a map and looked at it carefully. They were looking at military maps, which were very detailed and accurate. He ran his finger across the map, took out a pen, and wrote down a few places Yiqian might go next month. Hey, you know a little? So fast. Who told you? G3 asked from behind him, took out a pen from the desk, and ran it across the map. This is a flight mission. We will depart from Machadi at 77 degrees 28 minus 79 degrees 05 east longitude and 38 degrees 25 minus 39 degrees 22 north latitude. We will cross the entire Taklamakan Desert and arrive at Ruoqiang at 86 degrees 45 minus 93 degrees 45 east longitude and 36 to 41 degrees 23 north latitude. As for the specific aircraft type, it is top secret. Choosing a desert was like choosing Area 51 in the United States. There was nothing but secrets. Xia Jinyuan picked up the map, slowly turned to look at G3, and raised his eyebrows slightly. G3, I was wondering why you immediately dragged us to flight training before we came down from the plateau. So you were waiting for us here. Don't look at me like that. I just found out too. The Snowfield Brigade is always at the forefront. You should have known on the day you joined that we take priority in everything. G3 smiled, his low voice full of pride. Let's have a meeting. We will depart in 3 days. All the soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade were all-rounders. They had to be trained in fighter jets, tanks, and even naval combat. Be loyal to the motherland, surpass yourself, challenge your limits, and win every battle. This was the Snowfield Brigade's slogan. At 7 o'clock, the Snowfield Brigade's 2 teams had a meeting. It was not held in an outside conference room, but in an underground conference room. They turned on electromagnetic shielding and tracked the radio waves of unknown origin to prevent the meeting from being eavesdropped. Xia Jinyuan's gaze was cast on the screen. He watched as the red laser light swept across the sky and the flight path that the fighter jet had to pass through. His thin lips were already smiling slightly. He and his little fox were really fated to meet in the same place, even though they were thousands of miles apart. 3 days later, when Xia Jinyuan set off, Yiqian was lying on the sand that was scorched by the sun. The endless yellow sand was the only scenery she had seen in the past month. Other than the flying yellow sand, she would occasionally see cactus in the desert. She was now in the Taklamakan Desert, and it was the golden season to cross the desert. What she needed was not to cross the desert, but to train here. Just as Principal Chan had said, he had brought her across the plateau, desert, plains, and across forests. Now they were undergoing desert training. They did not have a fixed time, but they could leave when they wanted to leave. The beautiful golden scenery of the poplar leaves did not enter Yi Jian's eyes. In her eyes, she was sniping Headmaster Chun, who was hiding in a golden world. The sound of a camel ringing a bell came from the sand dune. Yi Jian looked ahead through the scope and saw a group of desert explorers carrying backpacks. They climbed over the sand dune and slowly walked towards them. He, their target was He, who was behind her. The Hetian River was one of the three main sources of the Darim River in China. It originated from the Kunlun Mountains and the Karakoram Mountains, flowed north into the Darim Basin, passed through the Taklamakan Desert, and joined the Darim River. Yi Qian began to wriggle in the yellow sand with her body. She did not get up. If she got up to avoid these travelers, Principal Chun, who was in hiding, would not hesitate to shoot. Chapter 343. Yi Qian's body wriggled like a snake, and soon a human hole appeared. She then used her arm to rub against the sand. As the layers of sand covered her, Yi Qian's entire body was hidden under the yellow sand. Her gun was also hidden under the sand, under the protective cover. Not a single foreign object could enter the gun, not even a grain of sand size of salt. Protecting the sniper rifle in her hand was also protecting her own life. Soon, the group of 12 people walked past one by one under Yi Qian's nose. Her anti-dust glasses were stained with sand from the traveler's footsteps. She even smelled the smell of the camels. It was a little unpleasant, with the smell of urine. After passing through 2 more sand dunes, we'll reach the Hetian River. My dear, walk faster. God, I see a huyang tree. Quick, look. A huyang tree. A huyang tree whose leaves are like gold. This was a group of foreign travelers. They had passes that allowed them to enter China, so their identities were travelers. Yi Qian held her breath and didn't move until she finally couldn't hear their footsteps anymore. Then she slowly revealed her body from the sand dunes. They were also the only travelers that Yi Qian had seen in the dozens of days that she had been here. It was as if they had suddenly broken the silence of the entire desert, breaking the cold isolation of the world, and instantly pulled her back into the crowd. If it weren't for the special circumstances, she thought that she would have rushed forward to give them a warm hug and welcome their arrival. Being happy was only a matter of time. Soon, hiding, moving forward, the same thing happened again. Yi Qian, who had already learned how to remain calm and collected in the cold, stayed parallel to the sand so that she wouldn't be exposed to the sniper's range. Learn to search in the cold. Learn to calm your heart in the midst of the bustle. You need to be above your emotions and allow yourself to fully adapt to the environment. This was the true meaning that Yi Qian had learned in this desolate desert. The footprints left behind by the travelers on the yellow sand were blown away by the wind. Yi Qian, who had been there just a moment ago, also disappeared in the wind. The little girl escaped? Not long after, Principal Chen's figure appeared. He stood where Yi Qian had been hiding and laughed. Not bad at escaping. With something hard pressed against his back, Yi Qian said with a smile, I didn't run away. I just changed my position. Uncle Chun, you've lost this time. This sniping training lasted 46 hours. At this time, she and Principal Chun were covered in yellow sand. If they used their hands to scrape their faces, they could scrape off a layer of sand. His lips had not drunk any water for 46 hours and had been supported by the cactus juice. Not only were his lips bleeding, but they were also covered in white scabs. It was cactus juice stain. Not bad, 46 hours. It's 5 hours earlier than before. You made some progress, girl. Uncle Jin handed the military water bottle to Yi Qian and took the sniper rifle from her. I'll take care of the gun. You guys rest. The old man in his 70s resolutely accompanied Yi Qian and Principal Chun on this arduous training journey. Beside their feet was the Hetian River. Yi Qian lowered his head and used his hands to wash off a layer of yellow sand. His small face was red from the sun. He said to Principal Chun, Uncle Chun, you rest for the endurance test tomorrow. I'll be fine by myself. No matter where they were, Yi Qian had to carry out the endurance test. Crawling backward, navigating obstacles, fully armed stealth, completing a 2,000-meter race in a fixed time, and so on. Yi Qian had to carry out all of these endurance tests. Chapter 3:44. There was no time to rest. It had to be done in one go. Yi Qian was worried about Principal Chen's stamina, so he proposed to do it alone at night. You want to try it alone? After washing his face, Principal Chen smiled as he looked at Yi Qian, who was as tenacious as a vine growing on a cliff. He used his stable roots to dig into the crevices of the rock step by step. His gaze was kind as he asked, "You plan to do it alone at night?" Yi Qian knew there was hope. He winked playfully and smiled optimistically. "I can't always have you by my side. I need to learn how to face the darkness alone. I'll bring the compass with me. I won't get lost." "Okay, then Uncle Tong Jin and I will wait for you here." Her courage and perseverance made Principal Chun feel that no matter how hard and tiring it was worth it. Here, Principal Chun not only trained Yi Qian to be a world-class sniper, but he also trained him to be a Special Forces soldier who could join the Special Forces directly after graduating from military school. Now, he was training Yi Qian to snipe on the ground. When it was over, he would bring Yi Qian to the jungle for training next spring. Night fell. The night view in the desert was even more pure than in Tibet. Yellow sand stretched under his feet, but the sky was filled with twinkling stars. Yi Qian used his binoculars to look at the Milky Way. The sky was so vast and magnificent that he felt like he was just a drop in the ocean. The sky was like a mirror. Among the twinkling stars, he could even see shooting stars whizzing past, leaving behind the most beautiful scenery. With only a few minutes to admire the beautiful night sky, Yi Qian dove into the desert and began his endurance test. Stars twinkled in the sky. Yi Qian, who was admiring the night view, didn't know that Xia Jinyuan was sitting in the co-pilot's seat, ready to go. Under the command of Xia Jinyuan, the jet rose into the night sky at an angle of 60 degrees, then flew parallel to the finish line. Under the command of the control tower, he and his 4 comrades from the Snowfield Brigade, as well as 5 pilots, flew the 5 newest fighter jets and began a series of maneuvers and drills, simulating the dropping of a bomb, rushing up at an angle of elevation, and rapidly descending at an angle of elevation. These were all things that they had to use their lives to practice and complete. When Yi Qian, who was lying prone in the desert, heard the rumbling of the fighter jets, he couldn't help but pick up his binoculars and look up at the sky. In her eyes, she saw several airplanes flying over her head at an extremely fast speed. In Xia Jinyuan's eyes, he knew that he was in the desert, and he didn't know where he had met his little fox. The difference was that he was in the sky while she was on the ground. At the same time, at the same place, they would definitely meet. As for her, she would hear the sound of fighter jets. No matter which one it was, his figure would always fly past her, pass through the Hitian River, and complete the defensive roller. His voice couldn't reach Yi Qian's ears, but it was clearly transmitted to the control tower. The test flight of fighter jet was full of unpredictable dangers, but he still maintained a calm and unruffled composure. Yi Qian didn't come back that night, and Principal Chun and Uncle Jin didn't sleep the whole night. They sat there until the sun rose. In the ground line, Yi Qian appeared with the sun, with his back against the rising sun, walking over the sand from afar. She saw 2 black dots standing in the distance. They were her closest family, the elders she respected the most in her life. What she didn't know was that someone had met her at a certain moment last night. After staying in the desert for 4 months, in February of the following year, the 3 generations of people arrived at the vast forest in the southern part of the Shi province. This was a place full of legends and dangers. Yi Qian began his 4-year training program, which was originally in the middle of the 3rd year. Chapter 345. On the day that Yi Qian arrived in the western province, a farm vehicle drove 70 yards through the narrow roads of Magadi County. With a loud screech, it stopped at the entrance of an old bus station. The car door was slammed shut. Xia Jinyuan, who was covered in yellow dust, strode into the bus station that didn't even have a door. It was hard to tell the original color of his clothes. T, wait for me. Han Jing, who got out of the car a step later, choked on the yellow dust that came out of the car. He coughed and jumped out of the car to chase after Xia Jinyuan. Who are you going to ask? How are you going to find them? We don't even have a photo. The fighter jet test lasted for nearly 2 months. Every night when the plane stopped working, Xia Jinyuan could be seen standing on high ground, looking in the direction of the Hetian River. There, after a radar scan, 3 red dots appeared on the radar display, which meant that there were people in the desert. The military sent people to investigate in secret, just in case. The results were shocking. But after that, the military didn't send anyone else. Obviously, they knew that the 3 people who stayed in the desert for a long time were not criminals who were spying on the military. Xia Jinyuan knew who the 3 people were. As for Han Jing, he only found out 5 hours ago. Xia Jinyuan, who strode to the bus station staff to ask questions, didn't hear what Han Jing said behind him. He looked tired and was asking about Yi Qian's whereabouts. According to the radar display, Yi Qian, Uncle Chun, and Uncle Jin returned to Magadi County from the Hetian River 15 days ago. Based on the travel time, it would take about 10 days. According to his calculations, the 3 generations should rest for about a week after returning to the county. But he was wrong. The travelers who left the Hetian River would rest for a week in Magadi County to recover their energy before leaving. However, Yi Qian and the others only rested for a day before leaving. Xia Jinyuan had just finished a few months of fighter jet test missions. Last night, he began to inquire about the whereabouts of the 3 generations. Soon, he found out that they were at the bus station. In fact, when he was driving over, Xia Jinyuan knew that there was a 99% chance that Yi Qian had left McGathy County. There was also a 1% chance that there was a problem with the maintenance of the bus that came in and it needed to be parked for a few more days. As soon as Xia Jinyuan asked, the staff immediately knew who he was inquiring about. He smiled and said, "We've seen the young man and the 2 elders you mentioned. They left 4 days ago." The little girl was fair and clean. She stood out among the group of tan tourists. One of the ladies even asked the little girl what she used to smear it on her face. In fact, Xia Jinyuan already knew the answer, but he still wanted to ask again. Outside, Han Jing found out from another staff member that Yi Qian had already left 4 days ago. He secretly clicked his tongue. Are these 2 fated or not? Our motherland is vast, but they actually bumped into each other in the desert. If they were fated, it didn't seem like it. It wasn't easy for them to have the chance to meet each other, but they missed it. The New Year had just passed, and the small county still had a lingering New Year's atmosphere. Occasionally, the sound of firecrackers could be heard. Xia Jinyuan bought 2 bottles of mineral water that were 3 times the price outside. He stood alone at the place where Yi Qian had stood before, drinking the water and sighing helplessly. Little fox, you're really fast. You make me happy and sigh. Next time I see you, I have to ask for some interest." Chapter 346. What are you mumbling about? Let's hear it. Han Jing, who was holding 2 bottles of mineral water in his hands, walked over. Seeing his tall and straight back, his childhood friend exuded the aura of a soldier no matter where he went. He teased, "Your little fox can become a celebrity wherever she goes. I can grab any staff member and they'll know her." She left 4 days ago and only rested for 1 day. She was lucky to meet the tour bus and left the next day. TSK, TSK, TSK. Mr. Xia, it's hard for you to catch your little fox. Xia Jinyuan tightened the cap of the half-empty bottle of mineral water. He glanced at his childhood friend who was teasing him and said with a smile, "Do you think my little fox is like those brainless women with big breasts?" She had a plan to enter the desert and leave the desert. Luck? She never believes in luck. She only believes in herself and the truth. The truth was that they met the tour bus on the way back from the Hetian River. It was completely planned before they entered the desert and left just in time. Damn, there are benefits to having big boobs. I don't have to worry about them. Han Jing was not convinced and snorted. I'll spend some money to get them. Unlike you, running around everywhere. How tiring. He did not have the patience to chase them like this. Xia Jinyuan laughed even more coldly. Your pursuit is not worthy of praise. You spent money to find women, but in the end, they are all unreliable. What are you after? It's hard for me, but I'm willing to do it. Finding a girlfriend who can fight side by side with you is like finding a soulmate. It's the highest level of love between two people. People like you who spend money to find big boobs will never know what it means to be connected. You're destined to be single for the rest of your life. You want to feel superior in front of Xia Jinyuan? TSK, the word blow will make you want to cry. Han Zheng, who had been unable to gain the upper hand every single time, received a blow from his childhood friend. He was so angry that the mineral water bottle in his hand cracked. He gritted his teeth and said, "You don't even know where he is, and you're talking about telepathy with me." Pooh! Han Zheng, who did not admit defeat, was thinking differently. He could not deny that Xia Jinyuan's words did shock him. The women that he had spent money to find were all useless in the end, but the women that he had painstakingly pursued were able to fight side by side with him. No matter how he looked at it, he felt envious. Xia Jinyuan smiled as he walked past Han Zheng, who seemed to be deep in thought, and left with graceful steps. He did regret not being able to see the little fox, but that did not affect his mood. In the great mountains and rivers of the motherland, he and she had left their footprints in the same place at different times. Although they had never met, it was still perfect. The faint sound of firecrackers could be heard again. Xia Jinyuan raised his wrist and looked at the date on his watch. It was the 21st day of the first lunar month, the 6th day of the second lunar month. He and Little Fox had spent the spring festival in the same place. It felt pretty good. Then, he jumped into the car and shouted at Han Zheng, who had yet to walk over, "We'll roast a whole lamb tonight. If we don't leave now, are you sure these few wolves will leave a lamb leg for us?" After standing still for a second, Han Zheng slapped his forehead and ran faster. "I almost forgot. Where's the lamb leg? It would be nice to have lamb hooves to eat if he went back late. Hurry, 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 let's go. We've been flying for 60 to 70 days, and I still have to control my weight. If I don't eat meat soon, my waist won't have any strength." Han Zheng jumped into the car and closed the door. He raised his eyebrows and smiled proudly. If a man has no strength in his waist, young Master Xia, what do you think will happen? Chapter 347. You've always had weak kidneys and lost your youthful vigor in early age. You should know better than me the consequences of a weak waist. As for me, first young Master Han, don't be jealous. Xia Jinyuan stepped on the gas pedal. Even the yellow dust on his body couldn't hide the elegance between his eyebrows as he laughed. He was very experienced in insulting his childhood friend. Han Zheng's disgruntled pooh could be heard from the car. The wheels rolled up yellow dust as they left the bus station. At that time, the hundreds of thousands of creatures in the western province were waiting to awaken. After Yi Qian and the others arrived in the western province, they followed the plan and settled Uncle Jin down before starting the training. It's now the 3rd year of the plan. "Girl, there are benefits to taking a break from school." Principal Chun, who was holding a military map in his hand, looked kindly at the energetic girl. "The 4-year plan has been brought forward by a total of 14 months. It's completely beyond our expectations." The 4-year plan started in April 1995. The first year was in April 1996, and the second year was in April 1997. It was now February 1997, and they were in the middle of the 1998 plan. The benefits of taking a break from school were obvious. In less than 2 years, she was already in the 3rd year of the plan. Faced with Principal Chen's sigh, Yi Qian smiled and said, "I still have to thank number 1 middle school. Otherwise, how could Grandpa Jin and you agree to let me take a break from school?" "Clever girl. Just as you wish." Principal Chen laughed. This girl was actually quite clever. "Come, let's talk about the training this time." Entering the mountains wasn't done aimlessly. There was a strict route, and the coordinates and latitude could be matched on the military map. Where to enter, where to pass, and which exit to exit were all strictly planned. Her peers were still sitting in the classroom and comparing their knowledge with the textbooks, but Yi Qian had already walked a long way in life. This was a distance that countless people could only dream of. It was a journey that countless people would never be able to reach in their lifetime. Yi Qian's life had already begun. Her life was destined to be extraordinary. On the military map, Principal Chun, who was holding a twig in his hand, had a serious expression on his face. He repeated the route again. This is the starting point, and this is the end. 3 months later, we'll meet up with Uncle Jen at the end. Lass, the western province's 100,000 forests. You don't need me to tell you how dangerous it is. We have to come out in 3 months. Once we enter the rainy season, there will be more unpredictable dangers. I can, but your old injuries. Yi Qian pursed her lips slightly. She was ultimately worried about Uncle Chen's old injuries. How about we shorten the 3 months to 2 months? Principal Chun looked at Yi Qian coldly and said, "This is the training plan. You agreed to it yourself. You don't have to worry about me. Just take care of yourself." The lass was easily soft-hearted in front of him and Uncle Jen, but he had to make her understand that training was training. There was absolutely no room for discussion. Yi Jian's heart skipped a beat, and she nodded. Her beautiful face, which was like a blooming hibiscus, was serious and cold. Understood. Yi Qian, who realized that she had made a mistake, didn't say anything else. However, she made up her mind to take care of Principal Chen more when the time came. On the 8th of February, Yi Qian and Principal Chun, who were carrying waterproof military backpacks, rushed into the mountains and forests. Along the way, they alerted the enemy by walking through the bushes. They waved their military tongs, which could be used as knives, to cut the vines to open a path. They passed through forests that no one had ever walked through before. Facing the cliff, they prepared to climb the rope. Gritting their teeth, they climbed step by step like a fox. Chapter 348. When they came into contact with the river, they tightened their bags, waterproofed their guns and bullets, then stepped directly into the river, where they did not know if there was any danger. When they came out of the river, the sky was dark. They found a depression and rested, soaking wet. There was no fire or hot water here, and the only food they could eat was not cooked. From mushrooms to wild fruits, even raw meat could fill their stomachs. Yi Qian never complained about the hardships, nor did she shrink back. She was like a young girl chasing after the sun, running all the way to where there was light. Along the way, she trained. She did not know how many mountains and cliffs she had climbed. Finally, she successfully completed more than 10 field training courses. Although it was a daunting experience, it was Yi Qian's first time entering the forest. There were a few times when she really had a close brush with death. If it were not for Principal Chen's rich experience, Yi Qian knew that she would not have been able to walk out safely. But it was only in the first half of the month that accidents occurred. Soon, she adapted to the environment in the forest. Like a cheetah, she roamed the forest vigorously. At the beginning of May, the two of them walked out of the vast mountains. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were savages. Don't the two of you have a set of clothes that are a little more presentable? The climate in Beihai was pleasant, and Uncle Jin was not any less spirited than before. He looked at the two of them who were dressed in rags and did not look well. He sighed. This must be an old beggar bringing a young beggar out to beg for rice. If it were not for the fact that the two of you are clean, I'm afraid that no bus would bring you back. Yi Qian put down her backpack. Her eyes became clearer, and she giggled. You guessed right. When we first left the mountains, Uncle Chun and I were waiting for the village bus. When we got on, everyone on the bus thought that we were beggars. Uncle Jin rented a house in a vacation village near the North Sea. He paid a hefty sum every month just to wait for Yi Qian and Principal Chun to come out. In a holiday village, Yi Qian rested until all the swollen mosquito bites on his body disappeared. He then took a medicinal bath prepared by the local traditional Chinese medicine doctor for half a month, until his blood was rosy and his skin was white and tender. Only then did he return to Fujian town. At the end of May, there were still 20 days left before the middle school exams. Yi Qian returned to Fujian town and appeared in class 1 of grade 3 of Fujian Town High School the next day. When she was in her 3rd year of junior high school, her classmates were still in their 2nd year of junior high school. Even though he was 1 year ahead of them, when the teacher led Yi Qian into the classroom, which had been filled with chatter, immediately fell silent. After a while, the students in the class couldn't help but discuss in whispers. This, isn't this Yi Qian? Why is she here? Yi Qian is so awesome that he tore up the notice right in front of the vice principal. Are you here to repeat your studies? Oh my God, that's impossible. Even if she wanted to repeat her studies, she would have done a year ago. How could she repeat her studies after a year? The homeroom teacher had received instructions from the school leaders. Regardless of what the students were saying, she simply smiled and introduced, "Students, quiet down. This is Yi Qian. I'm sure everyone has heard of her before. From now on, she will be a member of our class. Students, please give her a round of applause to welcome her back to school." The applause was extraordinarily loud. Everyone was curious about the legendary senior who had suddenly appeared in their class. After the applause died down, the homeroom teacher smiled and said, "If you have any questions about your studies, you can look for her. I believe that even if student Yi Qian were to take a year off from school, he would not be worse than any of the students in our class. Even if Yi Qian had left school for a year, she was still a good student in the eyes of the teachers in Fujian Town." Chapter 349. The students in the class looked at Yi Qian, who was standing shoulder to shoulder with the teacher at the podium. For some reason, they didn't dare to look her in the eye. Her eyes were clear and beautiful like colored glass, but they also contained a dark and mysterious power that seemed to be able to see into people's hearts. Some of the students who still had some ulterior motives accidentally made eye contact with her and left in a panic in less than half a second. Their backs were drenched in sweat. Yi Qian just wanted to go back to school peacefully and focus on her exams. She didn't mind giving a warning to the restless students. Standing on the podium, she didn't feel like a stranger at all. She could even speak with Rongqian. The students below the podium secretly sighed. A top student was a top student. She didn't feel any pressure standing next to the teacher. There was one more thing that both boys and girls agreed on. The legendary figure on the podium was even more beautiful than before. Yi Qian returned to school after a year. That day, she caused a stir in the school. She only took half a class to remember all the names of her classmates. After class, whenever someone came up to talk to her, she would call out their names as if they were old classmates. It's nothing. At that time, I felt that I might not fit into high school life, so I took a year off to relax. Yi Qian patiently explained why she tore up her acceptance letter last year to her classmates who were 1 year younger than her. The explanation of the person involved was naturally more convincing than the rumors and slanders. In addition, Yi Qian spoke at a moderate pace. She spoke like a spring breeze and had her own unique insight. In less than half a day, she gained a firm foothold in the class. Within a day, she had integrated into the group of third-year middle school graduates who were 1 year younger than her. That day, after leaving school, Yi Qian ran into a teacher she was very familiar with. Teacher Ku, who had been her class teacher for 3 years. Now, she was no longer a teacher. Instead, she was a woman who worked at a vegetable stall and bent over 5 buckets of rice all day long. Yi Qian didn't stop after she recognized her. She heard her arguing with a customer over a handful of onions. As she walked away, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Teacher Ku, who never knew how to give in to others, would accomplish nothing once she left school. There was no need to go over to show off. Teacher Ku was no longer worthy of her attention. When Yi Qian returned, the person who was most shocked was none other than Mayor Yi, who would be promoted to a leader in the city this year. These past 2 years, Yi Jifan's official career had been very successful. He had been a mayor for 2 years, and then he was promoted again. Therefore, he had long put aside Yi Qian, whom he had not heard any news about. Furthermore, because Sun Dongxing had accompanied her daughter, Yi Qian, to live in the provincial capital, Yi Jifan had not returned to the village for the past year. He had no idea that Yi Qian, who he thought would never amount to anything, had returned to school. He went to the city for a week for a meeting. When he came back, Yi Qian had already been in class for a week. Yi Jifan, who was about to be transferred to the city at the beginning of June, pondered for a moment. His eyes revealed a hint of a sneer as he dialed a number. "Old who? You guys are in charge of marking the exam papers of the entire city's examinees, right? Look." His voice gradually trailed off and was drowned out by the chirping of the cicadas in the shade of the trees. His official smile could be seen on his face, but no one could hear what he said next. After the college entrance examination in June, it would be the middle school entrance examination. Yi Qian's name would also appear on the list of examinees. Her appearance caused the invigilators of every class to deliberately circle around Yi Qian to see what this legendary girl was like. Whether she can pass is still a problem. After all, she's a repeat student. Yes, but this student is smart. If she does well in all the subjects, it won't be a problem for her to get into a key high school. It'll be difficult. The repeaters don't have any grades in biology or geography. They can only rely on the results of the past 2 days to get into a high school, unless they get full marks in all the subjects. Chapter 350. While the invigilators were discussing regretfully, Yi Qian remained calm and began the middle school exams. Returning to the examination hall after nearly a year, the speed at which she wrote still surpassed all the other examinees. The invigilator standing beside her was dumbfounded. The speed at which she wrote was something that even the teachers could not catch up with. Politics, history, language, and English were still manageable. After all, they were rote memorization. But mathematics, chemistry, and physics were exams that required thinking. They needed to be calculated. They needed to be calculated on draft paper. But Yi Qian did not need to do that. When a mathematics exam began, the invigilator was shocked. You don't even need to calculate." The stunned invigilator raised his hand to press down on Yi Qian's exam paper. He looked at the legendary girl in surprise. "You don't even need to calculate these?" Only the last 2 application questions and 1 geometry question were left. When Yi Qian checked the exam paper to see if there were any problems, she had already memorized all the questions and calculated the answers accordingly in her mind. Even if the invigilator stopped her now, it would not delay her answering time. Hearing this, she smiled and said, "Of course I do. I've already calculated it in my mind." She pointed at the draft paper and said, "I can also save paper." The point was not to save paper. The point was... The invigilator took a deep breath and pointed at the exam paper. He forced himself to calm down and said, "Come, you should calculate these questions first. We will talk after the exam." The last 3 major questions were important and also multiple-point questions. No matter how shocked the invigilator was, he could not delay Yi Qian's exam. He knew that this girl did not score in biology or geography. He originally thought that Yi Qian would need to calculate the last 3 major questions or do some mental calculations. In the end, he saw the girl nod obediently after he removed his hand, and she started writing. She really started writing. Just like that, she finished the 3 major questions in one go without a pause. She did not need to use draft paper or do any calculations. She just started writing as if she already had the answers in her mind. After he was done, Yi Qian immediately put the test paper away. He did not want to leave anything that could be used against him. The invigilator did not realize that Yi Qian was wary of him. When he picked out his pen, Yi Qian stood up. "Sir, can I hand him my paper first?" There was no way to confirm if Yi Jifan had done anything, but it was always better to be safe than sorry. "There's still 80 minutes to go. Do you want to check the papers again? I'll collect it later." Looking at his watch, the teacher swallowed his saliva. "This question is too fast." "No need, I'm done." And, "Teacher, can I hand him my paper and leave the exam hall now?" Yi Qian was already used to her teacher's shocked expression. This time, she deliberately increased her speed to let some people know that his tricks were nothing. Trying to trap her? It was simply daydreaming. Moreover, if they try to frame her, then don't blame her for not giving them face. The invigilator was a teacher from Chengtang Middle School. When he heard that she was done, he thought he heard wrong and repeated, "Do you want to check the entire test paper? You didn't score in geography and biology, so you can't be careless in these exams." At this point, Yi Qian vaguely remembered that her name had been passed around by the teachers of various middle schools. She looked up and smiled politely. Yes, I'm sure I'm done. Thank you, teacher. Chapter 351. All right then, put the test paper on the podium. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. The invigilator raised his hand and gestured for Yi Qian to hand in the test paper first before returning to his seat. However, he heard Yi Qian say, Teacher, if you have any questions, you can ask me outside. Leave the exam room immediately after handing in the test paper. This is the rule. Yi Qian could tell that the invigilator did not have any ill intentions towards him, but he still maintained a high level of vigilance and would definitely not leave any traces of criticism. The invigilator patted his head and waited for Yi Qian to hand in the test paper and leave the exam room. Then, he took out a piece of draft paper and walked out of the exam room. You came out so quickly. The examinees inside are under a lot of pressure, the invigilator said with a smile. He was expressing his goodwill and did not want Yi Qian to misunderstand that he had ulterior motives. He said, You did well in the teaching exam. You will achieve your wish. Sigh. Yi Qian's life as a student was not easy. As teachers, they could guess what happened last year if they thought about it. Fortunately, she did not give up on herself. After a year of adjustment, she returned to school. She did not do something stupid that would hurt her loved ones and please her enemies. Where there is destruction, there is hope. Where there is evil, there is good. And in this world, there is always more good than evil. Yi Qian could feel the invigilator's goodwill, and his smile deepened. Thank you, teacher. Even a teacher that he did not know was cheering for him. As he spoke, the invigilator's pen flew across the paper and wrote down a question. Just the question alone took him nearly 3 minutes to write. Come, try to solve this question. After drawing another geometric figure, the invigilator put away his pen. Try to solve this question. We are outside, so you can rest assured. Perhaps he thought of something and smiled at Yi Qian. You have handed in the test paper. Don't worry about anything else. It seemed that he had also heard about why Yi Qian tore up the acceptance letter in anger last year. After taking the pen, Yi Qian smiled and did not ask the invigilator why he wrote a question for him at the last minute. He began to solve the advanced mathematics question on the draft paper. From time to time, there would be leaders walking past the classroom. When they saw a student and a teacher standing outside, they thought that they had caught the cheating student and walked over. After the invigilator's explanation, they stayed back to watch Yi Qian solve the questions with interest. They then saw Yi Qian's clean-looking face. Under the teacher's orders, he was able to remain calm and composed. He lowered his head and quietly worked on the questions. Standing at the side, he had a tranquil and distant temperament. The teachers and leaders who surrounded him all smiled approvingly. After he was done, Yi Qian politely bowed to the teachers and school leaders who were looking at him. He said calmly, I'm done. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Not only were her grades excellent, but her etiquette and manners were impeccable. What was even more surprising was that even at such a young age, when she was the center of attention, she was still calm and composed. Her every movement had a calm and steady aura, as if even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her, she would not bat an eyelid. There was no doubt that such a student was a good student in the eyes of the teachers. The invigilator took the question that she had only spent 20 minutes to solve and said to another invigilator, Last year, number 1 middle school made things difficult for Yi Qian. They even asked her to tear up the acceptance letter. Did the leaders of number 1 middle school lose their minds? A student like this should be worshipped like a bodhisattva. How dare they make things difficult for others? What's the point of being an auditing student? A genius like her. Only she can choose which school she wants to go to. She only used 20 minutes to solve this advanced mathematics question. Chapter 352. Another invigilator took a look and smiled. Mr. Liu, Yi Qian has participated in the World Mathematical Olympiad and won a gold medal. Your question is really not difficult for her to solve. However, I agree with what you said. The leader of number 1 middle school, is really crazy. Yi Qian became the main character of the entire exam. Not only did the teachers pay attention to her, but even the leaders of the various schools came to see her from time to time. And Yi Qian's name was the name that teachers mentioned the most in class a few years later. Geniuses were born from luck. Yi Qian was like a sword that pierced through the sky and swept through the entire Anyang city. 2 days later, after the exam, all the examinees' exam papers were sealed and sent to the city for marking. Yi Zhifan, who had been waiting for news, received a call from Old Hu in the afternoon. He answered the phone with a smile, but when he heard the first sentence, "It's not easy," his face instantly changed, and he said coldly, "Not easy? Old Hu, aren't you the one who has been handling this? Old Yi, you want Yi Qian's exam papers to be invalid. Aren't you making things difficult for me? Her exam papers were specially modified. They didn't even go through our hands. The army sent 2 captains, an invigilator, and a notary to the province for marking. You still have the nerve to be angry? I'm not even angry with you. If I didn't find Yi Qian's name familiar, I would have been King invited to the commission for discipline inspection for tea." These words were like a clap of thunder. Yi Zhifan jumped out of his office chair. "What?" "The army escorted the exam papers to the province for marking." "What's going on?" "Old Hu, don't be angry. Quickly tell me clearly." "Clearly? I also want to know what's going on." "Last year, this examinee was admitted to number 1 middle school. In the end, this examinee tore up the notice and was suspended for a year. Old Yi, we have been friends for many years. Let's not talk about last year's incident. But this year's incident, I'll pretend that you didn't call me. As for me, I'll pretend that I didn't know. Let's just pretend that nothing happened. Also, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't make any more moves. Be careful not to get into trouble." If it weren't for the fact that they had known each other for so many years, he wouldn't have reminded him. Yi Zhifan did not know when the other party had hung up. He did not know how long he had been listening to the beeping sound. He sat there in a daze for a long time before he slowly put down the phone. Originally, he thought that it was just a matter of moving his finger. But now, it seemed that it was not something he could do. If even a military were to step in, then who exactly was it that was protecting Yi Qian? Who was it? Was it someone he couldn't afford to offend? Was it someone he couldn't afford to offend? Yi Zhifan thought about a lot of things. There were many things that he did not understand, but there was one thing that he understood. Yi Qian's future was not something that he could cut off or interfere with. So, other than old Uncle Jin who helped Yi Qian behind the scenes, who else could it be? Yi Zhifan sat quietly in his office for a while. He looked at the time, then stood up with a tense expression and left the office. Yi Qian did not know that her exam papers had been sent to the provincial capital before she left school. She was talking and laughing with her classmates in the same exam room as her as she walked out of the school gates. She felt a cold and heavy gaze on her. She was talking to her classmates when she raised her head indifferently. Her cold and sharp gaze swept in the direction of the gaze. She saw Yi Zhifan standing in front of her in a formal suit with a gloomy expression on his face. When he saw her suddenly look over, he was caught off guard. Soon, he walked over with a cold expression. Chapter 353. Seeing this, Yi Qian's eyes turned slightly cold. He whispered a few words to his classmates, then smiled and said goodbye to them. When Yi Zhifan walked over, he maintained his smile and even took the initiative to speak. Mayor Ye's face is unfriendly. Who in Fujian town would dare to offend you? Yi Qian, I've really underestimated you. Uncle Yi Zhifan was not very calm. He gloomily stared at his niece, who was giving him a headache. Do you want to force our family to be unhappy before you give up? These words were really unreasonable. However, it was impossible to reason with their family. Yi Qian smiled coldly. Mayor Yi is really interesting. Could it be that all officials are as unreasonable as Mayor Yi? What does it have to do with me whether your family is happy or not? You go your way, and I'll go mine. Mayor Yi, be careful with your words. A dignified mayor was actually being lectured by Yi Qian. Yi Zhifan's face darkened. He looked around and saw a few people who looked like teachers looking at him several times. His eyes darkened as he shouted in a low voice, "Don't try to argue with me here. Come over here. I have something to ask you." Being an official was different. His face darkened, and he shouted. But his imposing manner did not scare Yi Qian. Instead, it scared the students passing by. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and looked over with a cold gaze. He said with a smile that was not a smile, "Do I have to go with you just because you ask me? Mayor Yi, your authority is really strong. Sorry, I have a strong temper that cannot be subdued by force. If you talk to me nicely, I might give you some face. Sorry for being so rude. Goodbye." He naturally left as soon as he said he would. Why would he give him any face? Yi Jifan was so angry that he almost lost control of his authority. He quickly stepped forward to block him and said sternly, "Yi Qian, don't forget that I am your uncle." "Uncle? Now you remember that you are my uncle? When you destroyed my future last year, didn't you have a lot of fun destroying it?" Yi Jian, whose expression didn't change, smiled and said coldly with a sarcastic expression, "Basically, you're my enemy, Mayor Yi. Do I still need to speak softly to an enemy?" He enjoyed Mayor Ye's change of expression. TSK, 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 green, white, red. It was really interesting. Last time, I said that Mayor Ye's family better not provoke me. Unfortunately, you didn't listen. You had to kick me out of #1 middle school, thinking that you destroyed my future. But look, can you destroy my future? Even if I take a year off, I can still take the high school entrance exam. Yi Qian's eyes were very dark and cold. She was staring at the scorching sun. Yi Jifan suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He stared at his niece, who really did not put him in her eyes. Yi Jifan sneered softly and said in a deep voice, "Take the high school entrance exam? Yi Qian, you think too highly of yourself. You don't deserve to be compared to Unyielding. She is in the province's #1 middle school. What about you? Even if you take the high school entrance exam again, you can forget about surpassing Unyielding. Yi Qian, you are just a child with no one to rely on. What ability do you have to make things difficult for me? What ability do you have to think that you are better than Unyielding, who has the help of her parents? Look at you. Once something happens, you can only withdraw. You can't even go to a good high school. Yi Qian, if you are really smart, you should know how to lower your head." Chapter 354. His voice became colder and harsher, and the threat in his voice deepened. No matter who is supporting you, you can only survive if you learn how to lower your head. Otherwise, no matter how good your grades are, there are still people who can make it so that you can't enter a school or study. Yi Jifan had calculated everything. As long as Yi Qian showed even the slightest bit of fear, he would be in the palm of his hand. He thought that by threatening Yi Qian like this, he would be able to see the fear on Yi Qian's face. After all, she was still a child. Faced with the stern reprimand of an adult, she would more or less feel afraid. As long as she was afraid, he would be able to convince her to give up her studies. Then, he would use some tricks to make it so that she would never be able to return to the southern province. His threat made Yi Qian's gaze shift slightly. Was there a test in his threat? A possibility flashed through Yi Jian's mind. After hearing what he said, Yi Jian's chilly laughter was like the clear spring in the mountain stream. So cool that there was a hint of coldness in it. You want me to not be able to enter a school and not be able to study? Mayor Yi is very capable. Then, let's just wait and see. Wait and see. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I want to see how many marks you can get. You want to compare yourself to Ying? Who do you think you are? At this time, Yi Jifan, who was already at a disadvantage, was completely under Yi Qian's control. He looked at Yi Qian with a gloomy gaze and revealed an arrogant expression. "Yi Qian, Uncle will wait for you to cry and beg me. Who does Ying think she is? I really don't want to compare myself to her. As for crying, please wait and see, Mayor Yi." By the time he finished speaking, Yi Jianxian had already replied with a smile. "Also, Mayor Yi, be careful that you don't fall from your horse." Officials were most afraid of hearing others say that they had fallen from grace, and Yi Jifan was the same. When he heard this, his expression was already ugly, and now he was so angry that his face turned the color of pig liver. When Yi Qian saw his expression change again, his laughter became even more crisp. When he left, Yi Jifan's face was still as dark as the bottom of a pot. He gloomily looked at Yi Qian's back as he left and gloomily said, "You refused a toast only to drink a forfeit. Let's see how long you can be arrogant for. You want to compete with Ying? You're overestimating yourself." From the beginning to the end, he did not have the confidence to say that one sentence from him could make Yi Qian unable to read. This was because he knew that this exam was not something he could touch. Yi Jifan knew very well that someone from the army came and hired a notary to send the exam papers to the provincial government for marking. However, he was still angry and wanted to threaten Yi Qian. He also wanted to find out if she really had someone supporting her from behind. This test made him so angry that he almost vomited blood, but he did not get anything out of her. Unfortunately, not only did Yi Qian not take his words to heart, but she also saw through his intention to test if she had someone supporting her. After seeing through his intentions, Yi Qian saw Mayor Yi as a paper tiger who only had a ferocious appearance. After holding back his anger for a while, Yi Jifan got back into the car. That night, he called his daughter, Ying. He did not hide the fact that Yi Qian was coming back for the middle school exams from Ying. It was good to let her be mentally prepared. Ying, who was studying at home and preparing for her exams, laughed as if she had heard a joke. "Dad, so what if she's taking the middle school exams? She'll still be screwed if she gets into a third-rate high school. My teacher said that as long as her grades are in the top 30 of the grade, I'll be in the best class in the liberal arts and science classes. Moreover, a first-rate teacher will be the head teacher." A year had passed, and Ying was more composed than before. When she heard that Yi Qian was coming back to school, she laughed disdainfully. "I still have 2 years to graduate from high school. She still has 3 years. Just you wait. I'll definitely crush her under my feet." Chapter 355. Her confidence made Yi Jifan laugh out loud, and the haze in his eyes disappeared. "Ying is indeed my daughter, Yi Jifan. You have ambition. All right, I'm just letting you know. Since you don't take it to heart, I won't hold you back from your studies. Yes, and Dad, I won't be going back to the city during the summer break. I'll attend a few cram schools. If there's any news about Yi Qian, give me a call. Later, if she really gets into high school, as her sister, I'll definitely call back to congratulate her." Yi Ying's tone was full of contempt. She was sure that Yi Qian would not amount to anything. Even if she got into high school, it would only be a third-rate school. The father and daughter were able to get along well. Son Dongqing, who had heard the gist of the conversation, also laughed scornfully. After Yi Ying hung up the phone, the mother and daughter continued to make fun of Yi Qian for a while before they stopped. Yi Qian did not care what the family thought. She returned to Shuku village that day without any psychological burden. She only stayed at home for one night. Before dawn, she went through the long tunnel behind her house and returned to the army that she had not been to for almost 11 months. The military camp was made of iron, and the soldiers were flowing like water. Yi Qian saw many unfamiliar faces as soon as she entered the army. They were the new recruits from last winter. There were also many familiar faces that she could not find anymore. They had retired and returned to their hometown. "Little Jian, you've been hiding for almost a year. That's not very kind of you." The political commissar greeted Yi Qian as if she was his child. He patted her on the shoulder. "Not bad. You've grown taller. You're no longer the little girl from before." In a year, Yi Qian's height had shot up to 165 centimeters. She was indeed considered a tall girl among the students. After returning to the familiar army, Yi Qian's smile relaxed. She smiled and said, "Of course I have to grow taller. If I don't grow taller, I'll really be short. If I can't reach the height requirement for female soldiers, then I won't even have a place to cry." You're still such a naughty girl." The political commissar was still the same as before. His smile had the dignity of a soldier, but also the concern. Let's go. Let's go to the field and practice 2 laps. Let's see if you've improved." After saying that, he led Yi Qian to the field. After taking a few steps, He looked at Yi Qian and sized him up. Let's go to the Internal Affairs Department to get a set of training clothes. I was wondering why he didn't look right. If he didn't wear his military uniform or training uniform when he came to the army, he would be an anomaly. We can't be outcasts. Thinking about Uncle Jin's request on the phone, the political commissar smiled and said, "Change your clothes and go to the field." Recently, there are a few troublemakers in the army. Come and teach them a lesson. Let's see if they still have the face to be troublemakers. Troublesome soldiers meant that they might be a little outstanding, but they didn't put the class leader in their eyes, and they would often speak ill of her. Before Yi Jian came, a few troublesome soldiers from the international metropolis crushed 2 green flies and threw them into the class leader's mung bean soup to relieve the heat. The poor class leader had diarrhea for an entire night and had even taken a few bottles of intravenous drips. These troublemakers needed to be taught a lesson. After putting on the summer training uniform, the 165 centimeters tall Yi Qian walked out. The political commissar couldn't help but clap his hands. This Yi Qian was no longer the little girl who just entered the army 2 years ago. She was valiant and formidable, looking as straight as a spear. Her military uniform gave off a proud and unyielding aura. When she stood there and gave a standard military salute, the political commissar saw her cold and inviolable military might. She was only 16 years old, and she was still a high school student, but she already had this kind of military might. Chapter 356. Good. As expected of the soldiers taught by the 2 old revolutionaries. Good job, Yi Qian. She was a soldier when she put on her military uniform, not a little girl. The political commissar did not return the salute. After all, Yi Qian had not yet joined the army. He walked in front of her and personally straightened her clothes and smoothed out the wrinkles on her shoulders. Go, Yi Qian. Your hot-blooded youth should be showered in the military camp. Don't praise me. However, the military camp is indeed my favorite place. Yi Qian tugged at the corner of her clothes and looked at the political commissar with her dark eyes that reflected the sky blue of the military camp. She smiled and said, "Forget about taking care of the troublesome soldiers. I just want to compete with them and see what kind of ability they have to be troublesome soldiers. And you can't go easy on them." One of the troublesome soldiers comes from a wealthy family. He is indeed quite capable. He has learned self-defense, and his physical fitness test was excellent. Amidst the laughter of the political commissar, the first thing Yi Qian did when she returned to the military camp was to fight with the troublesome soldiers. When Yi Qian was angry, the veterans who knew her knew how ruthless she was. When they saw her taking care of the troublesome soldiers, they all laughed and waited to see how Yi Qian would deal with those arrogant new recruits. Yi Jian was the first person who had been in university for 2 years. Because he was too rebellious, his family had used their connections to send him to become a soldier. Yi Jian did not use force first. She stood in front of the bodyguard, who had a look of disdain on his face, and said with a smile, "Oh, so you're from an international metropolis. You speak English. Okay, let's recite each other's familiar English. First of all, I just graduated from junior high school. Don't feel pressured." Reciting was Yi Qian's strength. The moment she took action, she was able to compete with this soldier who had a sense of superiority. The next day, she challenged this troublesome soldier who thought he was great because he had been in university to a math, physics, and chemistry competition. The sun was still above her head, and her hand was holding a pen. It was noon, but Yi Qian did not move. Her opponent, on the other hand, got a heat stroke because he was nervous. From then on, he never dared to say things like, "I'm good at English, I went to college. You are all country bumpkins." Taking care of another recruit who knew some martial arts was even easier. Dueling was Yi Qian's favorite pastime. It didn't take a few hours. It only took a little more than 10 minutes. Only when the other party's face was bruised and swollen did he stop calmly. Recruit, remember this. The class leader that you threw flies at has participated in 2 large-scale military exercises, participated in flood relief, and saved several civilians from rolling rocks. What about you? Other than your punching skills, what other inspiring things have you done? Yi Qian was a girl, and she was also a student. Her actions not only served to intimidate them, but also made these troublemakers feel ashamed. They felt ashamed of their own arrogance and complacency. In just a few days, Yi Qian had finished the task given to him by the political commissar. Without the accompaniment of Uncle Jin and Principal Chun, Yi Qian used her own abilities to gain a firm foothold among the recruits. She quickly gained their trust. How to convince the masses and how to get along with the male recruits was not something that the elders could teach her. She could only rely on herself to figure it out. She had already become brothers with the recruits. The political commissar saw this and called Uncle Jin, who was left in the village. Uncle Jin had left the village for more than half a year. The first thing he did when he returned was to chat with the villagers who came to visit him. He did not care about how Yi Qian was doing in the army. Now that he received a call from the political commissar, he was truly relieved. Chapter 357. That's good, that's good. As long as she can make friends with the new recruits and make them believe in her, I can rest assured. Uncle Jin had always remembered Xia Jinyuan's words. Yi Qian is not good at integrating into the team and will have a hard time in the army in the future. Therefore, when Yi Qian went to the army, he immediately called the political commissar. This was why Yi Qian had to deal with the troublemakers as soon as he entered the army. Principal Chun was also very busy when he came back. By the time he finished his work and contacted Yi Qian, it was already early August. It just so happened that Yi Qian called on the day of the results. She was still in the army and answered the call from the sentry box. You did well, girl. You got what you wanted. Before Principal Chun could report the results, Yi Qian, who was already confident, said with a smile, "Even if you don't tell me, I know how I did." After that, he reported the results. It was only 5 points lower than the actual score. Without the biology and geography scores, except for the Chinese essay, which was deducted 3 points, Yi Qian got full marks for all the other subjects. Yi Qian even lowered the score for the Chinese essay by 5 points. Yi Qian did not become the top scholar in the province, but he still got 4th place in the province. When the principal of number 1 middle school found out about Yi Qian's results, he regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. They had forced such an excellent student to leave the school last year. However, when he thought about Yi Jifan's current status and the fact that the Provincial Education Bureau had warned him not to publicize Yi Qian's results, the principal could only sigh inwardly. He did not show it on his face at all. When the provincial high school entrance exam results came out, Yi Jifan, who had been keeping an eye on it, did not let it go. He immediately called Old Hu, whom he knew from the Municipal Education Bureau. Yi Qian's results had been intentionally concealed by the Provincial Education Bureau. Old Hu, who was from the Municipal Education Bureau, naturally could not find out anything. If he could not find out anything, it meant that he did not get into the school. I only have the results of those who have been admitted to high school. Yi Qian's name is not on my list. Old Hu scanned the system, but couldn't find it. When he saw Yi Jifan paying so much attention to the examinee's results, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. I say, Old Yi, why are you so concerned about this examinee's results? If I remember correctly, you only have one daughter, Ying, right? She seemed to have thought of something and tried to tease him. The candidate's surname is also Yi. Could she be an illegitimate daughter that you don't want to acknowledge? You are indeed a scholar. You have a rich imagination. He's a distant relative of mine. His parents have some conflicts with my family. I'm just asking. Knowing that Yi Qian didn't get into high school, Yi Jifan was overjoyed. He didn't want Old Hu to probe any further. He happily said, "Let's have dinner together tonight. Don't you want to follow Secretary Wu's path? Deputy Tseng has a dinner appointment with Secretary Wu. If you're free, come along." This sentence was to Old Hu's liking. He didn't care about other people's business. He smiled and said, "Thank you," before hanging up. When Yi Qian didn't get into the school, Yi Jifan was happy. Naturally, Yi Ying and Sun Dongqing were also happy. "Stupid girl. I told you she's a good-for-nothing. Look, it's obvious that she doesn't have the life to study." Sun Dongqing looked at her daughter, who had blossomed into a flower. She couldn't hide the pride in her heart. She said harshly, "Ying, your sister didn't get into the school. You should give her a call later to comfort her." Ying, who was full of arrogance, raised her chin slightly. Her voice was thin and sharp as she laughed. "Mom, you're right. I'll call the village chief's house tonight and ask her to answer the phone." Chapter 358. The arrogant Ying lifted her chin slightly and laughed in a thin and sharp voice. "Mom, you're right. I'll call the village chief's house tonight and get her to answer the phone." She snorted with a look of disdain and said with a vicious look, "She thinks she can compete with me? She's just an orphan. I can bully her however I want." Yi Qian had to answer Yi Ying's call so that she could show off her superiority. However, Yi Qian was not around, so she could only hold back her pride and ridicule. On the third day after the results were released, Yi Qian did not even know her ranking in the province for the middle school exams. At this moment, Jiesin gave her a fierce bear hug and punched her in the back. Yi Qian felt a little uneasy when she was blocked by her classmates who had graduated from middle school and had not contacted her for almost a year. Especially when she saw the unfriendliness on their faces, she was prepared to apologize. "Jiesin, your greeting gift is too warm. My back is going to bruise from your punches. Damn, it's already a good thing that I didn't cut ties with you. So what if you received a few punches from me? Do you have any objections? Do you know how long you've been missing? It's been almost a year. Damn, we've been asking around, but no one has seen you." And Jessin's eyes reddened as she spoke. "We were all worried about you. Where have you been for the past year?" Zhang Na squeezed over from the side. "I haven't hugged you yet. We'll start the scolding session after I hug you." As she spoke, she glared at Yi Qian and opened her arms to hug her. "Yi Qian, just wait to be scolded by us old classmates." She hugged Yi Qian tightly and heard her slightly choked voice. Zhang Bin, who had entered the province's #1 middle school because of his specialty, stood at the back like a pillar. He looked at the girls hugging each other and laughed. "Yi Qian, why don't we hug too? Damn, get lost. Trying to take advantage of me." And Jessin kicked him in return, learned from Zhou Liao. "He's a gentleman. It's more polite to stand aside." Zhou Liao pushed up his glasses out of habit. After thinking for a while, he slowly smiled and said, "I'm not a gentleman. I'm waiting for the girl to finish hugging me before I do it myself." 1 year of high school had changed the shy Zhou Liao of the past. "Jane, let's ignore them. Now, Zhangbin is the boy who makes the girls in school scream. He plays basketball and is handsome, just like before." And Jiesin put her arm around Yi Qian's shoulder and looked at Zhangbin provocatively. "So what if he's handsome? You still can't hug Yi Qian." Just like when they were in junior high school, the two of them started arguing after a few words. Looking at them, Yi Qian knew that his friendship with them hadn't changed because of time. He smiled as he watched the two of them quarrel again. After exchanging a glance with Zhang Na, they both smiled knowingly. As for why, it was probably the thoughts of those young men and women. After laughing and arguing, the few of them sat in the bamboo forest behind Yi Qian's house. Each of them had a bamboo chair and held watermelons that had been soaked in well water in their hands. They talked about their high school lives and their academic results. After chatting for a while, Yi Jian found out that the 4 of them had taken part in the competition together, and all of them had chosen to enroll in the city's #1 middle school. Zhang Na and Zhou Liao had always been top scorers in their classes, so getting into the city's #1 middle school was a given. Zhang Bin was admitted to the province's #1 middle school as a student with a specialty. Chapter 359. And Jessin was good at her subjects and applied for #1 middle school. In the end, it was her geologist father who stepped in and spent money to get her into #1 middle school in the province. It was indeed a joyous occasion that 2 of her former classmates had entered #1 middle school in the province. "How did you do this time? Don't tell me you got into #1 middle school." The few of them were concerned about where Yi Qian would be going to school this year. Zhou Liao, who was more mature, asked, "We didn't come here for any other reason. We just want to know where you will be studying so that we can keep in touch. As soon as he spoke, Yi Qian could clearly feel the nervousness on their faces. They were worried that she would be upset. Ming Yan's eyes moved like water in the swaying bamboo shadows. Looking at their nervous faces, a bright smile bloomed on her face. Yi Jian raised her eyebrows and said leisurely, "You should have done well in the exam. You have also received the notice." "Damn, you scared me to death." After Jiasin heard this, she let out a long sigh of relief and took a deep breath. She had been holding her breath, waiting for Yi Qian to speak. Great. When school starts, I can tell that be *TCHEing. Let's see if she can still be so smug." She screamed happily as she jumped up from the bamboo chair and pounced on Yi Qian. She was so fierce and inaccurate that Zhang Bin cried out in shock. "Tomboy, be gentle." He was afraid that she would fall. "You're a human sandbag. You're really heavy." Yi Qian was also worried that she would fall. He quickly stood up and hugged her. He joked, "You're already a year older. Why are you still like a child?" Zhang Na smiled and glanced at the nervous Zhang Bin. She pursed her lips and laughed alone. "Tell me, where will you be studying? Hurry up and tell me." And Jiasin, who had pounced on him, sneaked her hand under Yi Qian's armpit and tickled him. She asked cheerfully, "Hurry up and tell me, or Nana and I will do it together." Tickling was nothing. Yi Qian opened his arms and smiled. "Come, tickle me all you want. I won't laugh when you touch me. You're so stubborn." After scratching for a while, and Jiasin gave up. She curled her lips and said, "If you're not afraid of this, what else are you afraid of?" She wanted to ask more, but Zhang Bin pulled her back and secretly gave her a look. Although he majored in sports, he had a father who was a policeman. Zhang Bin's temperament was also extremely meticulous, and he knew when to stop. "Don't ask anymore. Why don't you use your brain if you don't have results in geography and biology?" After Yi Qian started chatting with Zhou Liao, Zhang Bin secretly reminded Jiasin, "Can't you see that we're not asking anymore? You stop talking so much." Zhou Liao noticed that Zhang Bin was obviously warning the tomboy. He smiled and said to Yi Qian, "I don't know how Ying found out that she spent money to buy a school. Whenever she sees her, she will definitely mock her. You also know that tomboys can't tolerate it." Ying said that she couldn't tolerate it. Once she said it, they started arguing. In the end, both sides suffered. After all, they weren't from the same school, so Zhou Liao's knowledge was limited. He only knew bits and pieces about Zhang Bin and other students who entered the provincial first high school. Yi Ying's name. He hadn't heard it for almost 2 months. When he heard it again, Yi Qian's eyes turned cold. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, Ying won't dare to say such things again." Chapter 360. You. Zhou Yao's eyes lit up. He looked at his classmate, who had always been indifferent, in surprise. Then he let out a long, "Oh," and smiled sincerely. "Yi Qian, you always surprise people. It may be a surprise to you, but it must be a shock to some people." She raised her eyebrows slightly. Her casual and indifferent temperament changed instantly. There was a frosty air about her. "Thank you for your concern. Let's keep in touch." Zhou Yao pushed his glasses and reached out his hand. "We can't go to the same high school, but I hope we can go to the same university and continue our friendship." "I hope so too." Yi Qian reached out to shake his hand and smiled. "Continue our friendship." This was a promise. Regardless of whether it would be in the future or not, at least he was her classmate, her friend, and she sincerely hoped they could continue their friendship in university. On the other side, and Jiasin raised her voice and said cheerfully, "I'll give Ying a call when I get back." "Ha ha ha, I want to anger her to death." "Classmate, I don't want there to be a situation where I can't study. So, please keep this a secret for me. It won't be too late for you to tell me after I finish the admission procedures." Yi Qian, who already knew that his results were concealed by the Provincial Education Bureau, immediately stopped her with a smile. "I really can't tell you now. I'll only tell the 4 of you." After a short silence, there were 4 voices of assurance in unison. Uncle Jen, who was enjoying the cool air in his house, heard the laughter coming from behind the house. The old man, who was lying in the rocking chair, gently fanned himself with his eyes closed. He didn't want to disturb the gathering of the young men. Since school was about to start, the four of them stayed over at Yi Qian's house for a night and left early the next morning. And Jessin was still reluctant to leave after getting into the car. She squeezed out 2 drops of tears and held Yi Qian's hand. "You heartless person, you must remember to write me a letter, or else. This is too embarrassing. Hurry up and pull her into the car." Yi Qian, who was covered in goosebumps, pulled his hand away and motioned for Zhangbin to pull her into the car. Everyone in the car was watching, and Jessin laughed heartily. The car started, and Yi Qian saw 4 hands reaching out of the car window, waving goodbye to him. This was what friends were like. Because they were worried about you, they traveled thousands of miles just to see you. A week after they left, Yi Qian walked out of the village again with the letter of acceptance in his hand. He went to the province to study alone. Compared to last year, his state of mind was different this year. The car drove along the mountain road, bringing Yi Qian to a vast space. That was the provincial capital where she would be living for the next 2 years. Since someone was spouting nonsense and thought that it was a great thing to be admitted into the provincial first school, then she naturally had to walk in front of her and tell her that it was not a great thing to be admitted into the provincial first school. If she could pass the exam the first time, she could also pass the exam the second time. The provincial first high school. In the end, Yi Qian chose the provincial first high school. The train ticket was the same as before. It left at 8:30 p.m. and arrived at the provincial capital train station early in the morning. Yi Qian, who was taking the train to the provincial capital for the 3rd time, quickly found her seat. This time, she did not buy a sleeper ticket. Instead, she chose a more affordable seat ticket. She rode the bumpy train all the way to the provincial capital. When Yi Qian got off the train, she smelled like sweat. She ran to a travel agency near the train station and spent a few yuan to take a shower. She then changed into a clean set of clothes before coming out. Chapter 361. The travel agency was quite close to the train station. As soon as Yi Qian walked out of the travel agency, she suddenly heard a search broadcast from the train station. The broadcast was looking for a girl named Yi Qian. Student, short-haired, 165 centimeters tall. Name, identity, hairstyle, height. All of these were possible. Yi Qian froze for a moment as she held onto her luggage and thought of a possibility. Could it be that Uncle Chen knew from Grandpa Jin that she was coming and came to get her early in the morning? Thinking of this possibility, Yi Jian ran to the broadcasting room of the train station as fast as the wind after hearing it. The broadcast room was in the train station. Yi Qian found a staff member. The staff member looked at her student ID and took out his walkie-talkie to contact the broadcast room. Broadcast room, broadcast room. Yi Qian is in Gate A of the train station lobby. Yi Qian is in Hall A of the train station lobby. After repeating this, he said to Yi Qian, "Just wait here. The person looking for you will be here soon." He looked at Yi Qian and said sternly, "Children shouldn't run around. The train station is crowded and messy. Someone like you who is fair and clean, and also a student, is a perfect target for human traffickers." He treated Yi Qian as a child who had been separated from her parents. She didn't argue and accepted the kind reminder politely. "I'm sorry for the trouble. I'll just wait here, right? Stand on my side. Don't run around." The staff member was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He probably had a child around Yi Qian's age at home. He spoke as if he was reprimanding his own child. "It will take about 10 minutes to get here from the broadcast room. Just wait here, okay?" Yi Qian always gave people the impression that she was well-behaved and obedient, especially when she smiled. Where her clear eyes curved into crescents, she was the standard image of a well-behaved girl. She quickly nodded and didn't say anything. The staff member didn't have the heart to say anything more. Instead, he softened his tone and said, "You students don't know anything. You think you're an adult now that you've grown up. How much do you know about the evil in people's hearts? Uncle isn't scolding you on purpose. I'm just reminding you." She smiled slightly. Although she was standing obediently to the side, She was like a winter plum blossom swaying with a faint fragrance. She was proud and elegant. Little fox, your appearance is really bewitching. Fortunately, I met you in the mountains and saw your boldness. Otherwise, I might have been fooled by your obedient appearance. Yi Jian, who was chatting with the staff, suddenly felt a gaze full of tenderness fall on her from the front. She thought it was Headmaster Chun, so she looked up happily. Her palm-sized lotus face was smiling, like the dew on a lotus leaf in the morning, so clear and pure. Uncle was already at the tip of her tongue, but she quickly swallowed the word back down her throat. Yi Qian was shocked when she saw who was looking at her. A handsome man stood in front of her. His features were handsome, and he exuded a noble aura. He was wearing khaki trousers made of linen and a pure white shirt. It was casual wear, but on him, it not only made him look casual, but also incomparably elegant. It had been more than a year since she saw the dangerous man she had forgotten. Yi Jian's heart skipped a beat when she saw him again. Her reaction was, "Why is he here?" Chapter 362. The staff member looked at Yi Qian, then turned to look at the man walking over. She laughed and said, "Your brother is here. Hurry, stick close to your brother next time. Don't get separated again. You're making people worry." She mistook Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan as a pair of siblings. There was no other reason other than the fact that the two of them had a similar temperament. They were like steel and spears, exuding a biting cold aura. Before she could explain, Xia Jinyuan, who was dressed casually, walked over and politely apologized to the staff member. Sorry for the trouble. Even the words he used were the same as Yi Qian's. What made Yi Qian feel most awkward was that after taking 2 steps, the staff member turned back to look and muttered, "What kind of parents do they look like to have such a pair of good-looking children? They're a little too handsome." Both of them had sharp ears and eyes. No matter how soft the staff member's voice was, they could hear it clearly. The man who was as white as snow in spring laughed. The staff member was quite thoughtful. Wasn't he her brother? However, the word brother was different from the word brother. He really wanted to hear her call him brother. "You're stunned just because I'm here?" Xia Jinyuan's clear voice came slowly. There was a hint of a smile in his voice, and it was as intoxicating as wine. Brother came from afar. Why is my little sister so cold? She didn't even give me a warm hug. There was no warmth, no surprise, and no surprise. Her expression only said, "Why are you here?" Her indifference made Xia Jinyuan, who had been waiting for her for a few hours, feel sad. His little fox, you're really cruel. Even if it was an old friend meeting, there should at least be a little surprise. However, she was so unique. Why did he even appear in front of her? Yi Qian choked on the words brother and little sister. Her fair face flushed red. She glanced at him and said calmly, "I don't have a brother. Captain Xia, don't randomly acknowledge people as family." It had been a year since they last met, but Xia Jinyuan was still the same Xia Jinyuan from a year ago. He was still flirting with her and teasing her. "I'm older than you, so it's fine for you to call me brother." The shade of crimson on her face was truly breathtaking. Not a bit more, not a bit less. Her natural beauty was perfect with light makeup and heavy makeup. The smile on Xia Jinyuan's face deepened. He hadn't seen her for more than a year, and the little fox had grown up again. The familiar Xia Jinyuan was back. Yi Qian was alarmed. He discreetly put some distance between them and said calmly, "I'm not used to calling other people big brother. Also, why are you here? Did Uncle Chen come with you?" When she spoke, she calmed herself down. Because of the man in front of her, Yi Qian felt that time had treated him too well. He was not a soldier serving in the military, but a young man who was as white as snow in spring. He was elegant and radiant. His calm tone concealed Yi Qian's intention to put some distance between them. Just as Xia Jinyuan thought, she was not surprised at all when facing him. Xia Jinyuan, who quickly recovered from his sadness, raised his eyebrows and naturally took the luggage in her hand. He smiled and said, "Uncle Chun is very busy now. It takes some time to get used to a new working environment. He's not free today, so he asked me to pick you up at the train station. Uncle Chun is not free? How would he know? Yi Qian stopped and did not immediately follow him. Xia Jinyuan took 2 steps forward and realized that she was still standing in the same place. He smiled and walked back. Chapter 363. With his other hand holding the luggage, he freed up his right hand, which was beside Yi Qian's shoulder. He skillfully raised his right hand and wrapped it around Yi Qian's slender shoulder. This time, I have to keep a close eye on you. I almost lost you just now. Luckily, there's a broadcast. Otherwise, where would I have found you? How am I going to explain this to Uncle Chan when I get back? While Yi Qian kept her gaze forward, she frowned and glanced at the hand on her shoulder. It was slender and beautiful, like the hand that played the piano in the Golden Palace. But she knew how powerful and sharp his movements were when he fired the gun. Uncle Chun said that he works in the provincial capital. He'll come and look for me when school starts. Do you know where Uncle Chun works? Yi Qian frowned but didn't shake off his hand. Even though she didn't like being so close to him, she tolerated it. It was a pleasure to have a guest from afar. She was from the southern province, so she had to maintain the courtesy and reserve of a southern province citizen. Yi Qian's tolerance made the wolf Xia Jinyuan smile. He used Uncle Chun as an excuse to get close to her. She had no choice but to accept it. Uncle Chen's workplace. He said he wanted to give you a surprise, so I can't tell you now. Let's go and have breakfast first. She smelled faintly of soap, which was unique to her. It was a refreshing fragrance. You can't register until 9. It's still early. It was only 6 o'clock, and the sun hadn't driven away the coolness of the night. With Xia Jinyuan's arm around her shoulder, Yi Qian pursed her lips. When they entered a kanji shop, he let go of her and secretly sighed. She waved her hand gently, as if doing so could get rid of the minty smell he left on her. The breakfast shop was doing well. Yi Jian chose a table near the glass wall and sat down. The tables near her were filled with parents accompanying their children to enroll in school. While eating breakfast, the parents did not forget to lecture their children. One moment, they told their children to be bolder in school. The next moment, they told them not to be reckless. Yi Qian smiled helplessly. Poor parents. Sometimes, their words didn't make sense. A boy was annoyed by his parents nagging. He put a spoon in his bowl and retorted, "Mom, can't you let me have breakfast in peace? I'm 16 years old, not 6 years old. I wonder if I'm retarded if you keep saying that." Fine, 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 I won't say it. When a mother saw this, she immediately gave in and pushed half of the salted duck egg over. Eat the egg. Go report after you're done. Only parents would accept their children unconditionally. Yi Qian quietly lowered her eyes and chuckled. Just like Uncle Chun and Grandpa Jin, they were strict with her, but also unconditionally tolerant of her. Even though she didn't have parents to protect her, she was glad that she had 2 kind elders who cared about her. Xia Jinyuan, who had just returned from the cashier, stood not far away. He gazed softly at Yi Qian, who was sitting quietly like a painting. His deep eyes were dark like the occasional flickering light in the depths of the ocean. It was so dark that no one could guess what he was thinking at that moment. He walked over and sat across from her. His deep and handsome eyes contained a faint smile. He looked at Yi Qian and smiled. A bowl of kanji, a salted duck egg, and a bowl of youtiao. This is the most sumptuous breakfast I've had this year. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.